All right, you're all set.
Great. Hi, everyone. The meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee on Fort Getty for Tuesday, April 7th will come to order. The first item is roll call. John Potter. Here. Cassandra West.
Here.
Bill Sammons.
Here.
Richie Smith.
Here.
And the chair is here. Ray DeFalco is not here. In terms of ex officio, Jim Hegney is here. And Nancy Latendre. not
Yeah, I
here.
believe Ray should be showing up shortly.
Okay, great. So the first item is old business, and the first item among the old business items is the discussion of the Fort Getty description. We talked about this a little bit last time, and Cassie went ahead and developed a draft that she sent around. So I think we can just discuss that here a little bit. Cassie, you want to talk about how you envision this actually being used?
So I drafted this based on our discussion last time where we talked about it being more of a recreation area than a park. And so I also included some information about our perspective so far. We've kind of approached Fort Getty more by its uses than by the amenities that are there. And even our work now is trying to lay out and allocate space and design it so that it's more around the uses that people go there for and value it for than just the amenities and features that are there. So I kind of put that language in here too, because I feel like that's part of how we've approached our work so far. And this was intended for us to review and just kind of share this and consider it for our report.
Any comments for anybody?
Just one in that it is looking at kind of current and past in terms of uses, and how the space is allocated now determines really how it is being used and does preclude other possibilities. So I think the idea, so the question is, how do people desire to use it? I think you get there finally at the last sentence where it says how it may evolve to better serve the community in the future. It assumes that the current uses are kind of.
So I guess the way I think of it is the first two paragraphs are really how we would think about describing the identity, like how reframing the identity of Fort Getty. And maybe your point is a good one, that this may evolve following what we recommend, although, the town council may not accept any of our recommendations, except that if we want to just think about how would we describe Fort Getty now? And I mean, I love the point, and I love the idea of looking at a website and now it just really leads with campground. And we've clearly determined it's a lot more than that.
And the only other thing is, I know we had a discussion over park and recreation area. I don't want to preclude the fact that it's got to be called, I mean, I think it is Fort Getty Park, or, maybe Fort Getty Town Park, but Fort Getty Park gets referred to in other people's writings and the town's writing, I think. So it might be helpful to say Fort Getty Park is a town-owned managed recreation area.
We could put town-owned park and managed recreation area. Maybe that would go there. Yeah.
That's all.
I just had some additions about, so I'll just read what I changed. Visitors engage year-round. I added year-round in a range of activities, including walking, running, hiking, water-based recreation, commercial fisheries. I wanted to add dog walking and a fire pit. I just want to credit the fact that that's there. The site provides access to beaches and marsh and hosts town parks and recreation programs. Community sailing programs provided through a private nonprofit, and private and public events at the pavilion. And in addition, Fort Getty supports camping during the summer months. Those were my edits.
So just for the avoidance of doubt, the first two paragraphs, I think, clearly make a good introduction, and the next four paragraphs largely explain why that's the right introduction as opposed to the historical collection of assets, right? Okay, totally on board.
So I've been thinking of this in the recommendation section saying, we recommend using this or some similar framing to have clarity around what we believe the purpose and use and identity of Fort Getty is,
I agree.
and drawing from your language about why we think that. Okay. Do you think we need to adopt this?
I wouldn't say by formal motion, no.
Right. Because it will end up, we may end up editing it in the final document. Richie, any comments or thoughts?
No, I agree with the first two. I didn't know if this was the description that we would put forth, how much of the last three paragraphs would be needed. I can understand it going out, but if you were at the web page, I don't know. I was thinking more of like the web page, if you looked it up,
Yeah.
that the lower three could be, it's a lot to read. So most people, if it was the web page, wouldn't read it, but it covers everything that we want to do. I don't know if it probably isn't a web page. It's probably what we sent to the council, but a web page version would be a shortened version.
Yeah, I see this as part of our report and like
Yeah.
our guiding kind of thoughts about this work and definitions. So
Great. Thank you. Thanks for doing that. Okay, the next item is a discussion of proposed park policy modifications. Now, this is not certainly the last time we're going to do this. I just thought, given the time frame of our work and trying to get this report done, it would be good to push us all to think about how you've been thinking about the policies, the things that are really important to each of you, to each one of us, and to put those out here. And so again, we'll have other opportunities to do this, but are there any that people want to really put forth now?
So we just saw we just got the email today with the policies that exist. And what struck me is that they are all specific to the uses. Like there's not one like overall park policy. And, you know, we talked about like park benches as an example, and I don't know where that one falls in. That would be like a park policy, not, you know, what we got today was camping policy, RV camping policies, tent camping policies, pavilion policies. And so this kind of speaks again to that, like, you know, all these different activities and uses in the park and, you know, kind of bringing it all together and maybe possibly consolidating the policies. That's what I was thinking about.
Ray, I know you've been doing some thinking about that. I don't know if you want to speak to that now or not, the consolidation of policies.
Yeah, so for consolidating the policies into one manual, it is something that we're looking at doing. So while they need to exist separately, just so we can give it to patrons of the park and, you know, to people who are renting the facility, but to kind of do a global document that has policies of the park that it'd be all inclusive of all the policies, and then have those vetted and voted on.
I have shared with the committee my recommendation and ideas behind an RV camping reservation policy, which aims to do a couple of things. One, to bring RV rental rates to a market rate, and secondly, to broaden the opportunity to camp there while maintaining Jamestown residents options to have either seasonal or short-term camping opportunities. So it is suggesting some short-term rental sites. There were survey comments that specifically were from Jamestown residents saying, you know, we have house guests and we can't put them all up. Be great to have them come and camp or have an RV for a week or two. So it had that in mind. It would give priority, therefore, to Jamestown residents. And then for seasonal sites, I have kind of introduced a transition where over the next couple of years, we would transition to a lottery system where, you know, a rental, RV renter could perhaps know when they get a site that they can keep it for 3 years, but then they enter a lottery for, you know, going forward. So the lottery system, I think, broadens the opportunity to others. We just looked at what this, how many RVs are registered in the state of Rhode Island alone. That's 1,900. So we have a certain number of sites. It would be great to broaden that out. You know, so that is the meat of my recommendation. Questions, comments?
I had one quick question about the lottery. Once one's successful, is that a season? Does that provide, how long can one camp there after?
Well, we can,
succeeding
you
in
know,
the
we
lottery?
can certainly determine that, but
Yeah.
I was suggesting possibly they have it for 3 years. I
Okay.
don't know. I haven't looked into, you know, what is the you know, financial, the lease options for an RV, but
Yeah.
you know, so if someone has an RV, perhaps they would like to continue there for a couple of years, but it should not be indefinite.
Yeah. In general, I am supportive of the idea of trying to increase the amount of churn modestly
Right.
so that the waiting list is, I mean, I think we've got a lot of waiting lists around Jamestown. It'd be nice to create more churn in those lists. I'm not sure you actually need the lottery for it, but it's an elegant idea. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
As far as the turnover goes.
Yeah.
Right now, we already have, I guess, 4 to 10 spaces a year.
Right.
That turnover, Jamestown residents do get first refusal. So
Right.
Jamestown residents are not being excluded from the opportunity. As far as short term, I'm more on the page of seasonal. Just a couple of reasons. One is neighbors already complained some a little bit about traffic. I think if you were having RVs going in every 2 weeks or 10 days, I think that would upset the neighbors a little more than the campers going in on May 15th and leaving on October 12th or whatever the dates are.
Mhm.
I was a little concerned about that. And then the continuity of the park, where if it's the same, there's less trouble. People govern themselves. There's a lot of unity. And in the 10 spaces a year, 5 spaces a year, if it's 8% or 7%, figure over 5 years, it's quite a turnover. I don't know the age of it. I was going to ask Ray that after I talked to him last week. There may be a senior population that may have a greater turnover to happen in the next 5 years. Who knows? But I'm more on the path of keeping it the same or similar. There are some spots that open up if somebody's cancels for the year, takes their leave of absence. That spot does open up. They can use it part-time, from what I'm told. So there is a chance of some seasonal residents there. That was as far as the campers go.
Right.
There's other goals here as far as the maintenance. I don't know which line item you want to talk about first, but.
Yeah, I guess just on this one, because I think what we probably need to do, I don't want to take each one of these policy discussions, particularly starting with this one,
Mhm.
could take a long time.
Right.
Yep.
And I think we don't want to use the time that we have for our workshop today. So I'd rather kind of get a sense from people of the set of policies they want to be sure we devote a meeting to. Just to close the loop on this one, I'm sort of more along where Richie is. I'm definitely open to, when we decide on the number of RV sites, assuming we come forward with one proposal or a set of proposals on the number, that some percentage, the large number, a large percentage would be devoted to legacy. I think there is something about the community of campers who are up there that the community they have amongst each other, but also the spirit and the dedication to Jamestown that they have developed over time, that they bring to Jamestown over time. I do think opening up some percentage to more, transition. I like the short-term idea for some small percentage of them, maybe some percentage as they come off available to first-time users. But I would like to, my personal perspective is to have the bulk of them maintained for those legacy families.
Well, I have, in writing this up, I did consider the various points that Rich had made and you're making that, I think we should have a limited number of short-term. I'm not looking for making it a normal short-term RV site, which a lot are. And so I'm cognizant of the traffic flow. But when it comes to legacy rights, I consider that an inherited right. And, what I mean by that is, I'll tell a personal story. My grandparents bought a house in the middle of last century, and for every year for 50 years, the family had the right of first refusal. We had the ability to say, yep, we'll be there for this week, and we would pay our rental. And so the similar thing has happened, it seems, for these rental sites, that in 1975, a family rented a site. They have been able to maintain that site for 50 years in one case. That's lovely, except that, we have private property rights, a great American right. And that is something that my grandparents, paid money for a piece of property. They have not. They're renting a public piece of property. So
what I'm saying is that it's a policy that we would develop or offer or suggest for the town based on what our values are. I'm telling you what my values are. And so I would want a policy based on those values. It has nothing to do with property rights or the right of the person to do it. I'm saying, as a Jamestown resident, this is the kind of town I want.
So I know you want to call this particular conversation to a close. I'll just clarify my position on this. People are accustomed to having an undefined tenure, and I think we should probably define it. It doesn't have to be really short. It probably ought not be really long, so that we can encourage greater diversity in the population out there without destroying the sense of community that exists. I think we're just trying to find a balance there. But it's also quite clear from the survey and from a lot of ad hoc conversations that the notion that there's you call it a right, which I take huge offense to. It's a privilege, but it ought not be confused with a right. Yeah.
I agree with that. So clearly this will be a good discussion at a future meeting that we'll need to come to some conclusions on. Are there others? I mean, I think one is the structures. I think we should have some kind of, if we're sticking on RVs, okay, since we've started there, are there other policies around camping, tent camping, RV camping that we'll want to address? One that I think is important is having some parameters around the kinds of structures that can be built. We did hear for that from the survey. As we're thinking about improving and making each of those lots better, that may cause us to want to think through what kind of decks can people put up, that kind of a thing. I was interested in reading through the document that Ray sent us that it was something like, you can't use guns. I think we should have a policy, you can't bring guns. I don't know if that is a policy or not, but no guns in the house. Any other kinds of things on your minds around camping?
Look, I don't have any objection to the idea about limitations of what people can do there. I hope that our conversation about the size of the spaces also helps us inform what's actually feasible, because I do think some of the structures are pretty extraordinary at the moment. This is not got anything to do with campers per se, but I think that I would like us to contemplate, and I think it's a harder question than I appreciate. I mean, we talk a lot about bathrooms, but of course there aren't any bathrooms outside the camping season. I think that actually poses a bit of a problem to full-time residents who want to use the park in the off-season.
Yeah, so that's more of an amenity that we want to make sure is included.
Well, it's a policy about whether we keep it open.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Okay, so policies around bathrooms, access.
I would just second your point on structure. There should be some guidance on, what's allowed, what's not allowed. And also, as we'll get into it on the workshop, in terms of if we're standardizing RV site size, 30 by 60 lends itself to perhaps having one's vehicle at your site. So we may not need overflow parking for RVs. That should be looked at.
How about smoking? Just put it on the list to talk about. You going to say something, John?
Yeah. I'm just going to say, Bill earlier mentioned fees. I mean, I just assume that
Yeah.
fees across the board will be something we will address.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily specific rates on every item, but at least a direction of travel for different things.
Anything else on camping policies?
Well, I don't know if it's a policy. It does kind of relate to camping. And I don't know how we move forward with this, but how do we prioritize what we recommend to the council?
Yeah.
To put a list that this is something, and again, the bathrooms keep coming up, as John mentioned way back in the fall. It's a no regret situation. Same with walking past. There's some items, I think the camping is holding back a lot of Fort Getty's development, and I'm not going to call it development, improvement. I should use the word improvement. Because everybody's dwelling on what the RVs and what the campsites are going to be, but we're neglecting the fact that the hiking path could be extended, done. It could be done next winter if we push it through to the council early. Same with the bathroom renovations.
Yeah.
There's plans already made, but if we keep tying any improvement to the RVs, because that's the dilemma that's holding back Fort Getty, nothing will get done. Well, I just wonder if we could prioritize something to get done on Ed's schedule for next winter. Otherwise, it's going to be 27, 28 before anything can be addressed.
I mean, are you suggesting doing something outside of the parameters of just the report? To my perspective is we have a task, we have a charge, we're supposed to get a report to the council by June. And when we have a set of recommendations that I hope we can all agree to, we could then prioritize what we think they should move forward on. They don't have to pay any attention to it, but that's in my mind. How are you proposing we do something separate, like now?
Well, if we all feel that way now, I don't know if it's against the policy. It could still be in the report, but we could send notice early because the financial budget's almost done. Their planning's almost done. They got to get the planning done for next year. And if those are two of the highest priorities that have been there since 95, I don't see it would be wrong to send a letter to the council. Through all of these meetings, these items keep coming up. Is there any way we can address them for the winter of 26, 27? And it'll be in our report with everything else. And it's just more of a question to them so they can look ahead. Otherwise, it might be 27, 28 by the time a bathroom is done.
Which I kind of, I agree in general with the direction you're taking this, but, for instance, in looking at the plan, we might be looking at eliminating the central bathroom and probably improving the other bathroom. But those are things that probably have to wait till June. Things like the hiking trails, things that Park and Recreation, we can encourage them and tell them that we are going to be encouraging modification or enlargement of the hiking trail. It'd be great if you guys can get in there and do some of that work now. But
Yeah.
I think we basically need to hold off till June.
Yeah, because when I'm talking about the bathroom, I'm talking about the lower bathroom, just
Yeah.
renovating it.
Right.
So we could move ahead
But I think
I
that
feel
all
like the-
takes a bond, right? I mean, there's a bond that's,
well, it's already been approved. It's
right.
just a matter of putting the money
Yeah.
out and putting it on the schedule.
Yeah.
I know it's not, it would be part of our plan to get to the council by June. I just was wondering if there's a way to ask them if it's possible to do the things that people want. It's in our report, but can we send a notice and just ask what they think?
I, I guess I think the town council asked us to do this recognizing all of those factors. They recognized that people wanted electrical, they wanted the bathrooms, and they've asked us to do this more comprehensive plan. I guess when we get through, what I would like to do is get through a set of recommendations that we all agree to, because
Yep.
you're probably making the right assumption that we do agree on things like the path, but let's get there and then see if we think that's something we want to do. Maybe we can get the report done and deliver it early.
No, I'm not arguing about the report. I was just wondering if there was you could send a letter to see what their response would be. The report still would go through, but it doesn't hinder us from just asking that question. Because I wouldn't stop the report and I'd keep it all the same, assuming that it's all going to be done or not done, but all received at the same time. But it's just a question, if it's a possibility, because some of our task I still see is how to get Fort Getty better. And if we keep ignoring it, just saying, we're going to hand it over to the council and be done, it'd be nice to have a little strength in our commitment to what we want to do. And I know this report is really important, but it'd be nice to put some emphasis on the council to address some items early.
So could I suggest, I mean, I remember Eddie Ross asked me, what would I do if I were on this committee? And I said, well, the number one thing is we ought to come up with a list of no regret moves that we can get into action. And it's been quite frustrating that it's been hard to decouple some of these things. And maybe what we should do between now and the time we get together again is figure out, some of us as individuals, figure out if we can think about how some of those things can be decoupled. Candidly, I'm afraid I haven't figured it out on the bathrooms as much as I'd like to, because it feels like it's all heavily entwined in where do we land with where do we ultimately land with the RV design. But some of we should probably think through that and pick it up at a future meeting, probably just the next one, to see if there's anything we take decouple from the rest of the schedule. Does that sound right, Rich?
Yeah, it was just a question, if we could address one thing. I'm fine with moving forward, but it was just more of a question if we could address anything early, but I'm fine going forward.
I think we need to figure out how to break them off,
Yeah.
and almost I don't want to say the cost element of it, but there are some things we need to think through before we can split those things out.
No, I understand. I just really wanted to get it into discussion.
Okay.
Right. Just in terms of other policies, we definitely, the financial rate structure, we'll want to talk about. The design standards, which you kind of alluded to as well, Cassie. We'll want to think through, or at least make the recommendation, maybe not define what it should be, but make the recommendation that there should be some kind of design standards around things like the siting of benches and signs and okay. So we'll put this on the next agenda when we don't have a workshop, and this will be kind of the workshop, a policy workshop, and try and get some materials together that are informing that. Okay. So the next item is this discussion of this draft report that was sent around. This was really an attempt to begin to consolidate all of the work that we've been doing in the first couple of phases of our work and to put it in a place so that people can react to it, see if my framing is inaccurate or doesn't capture what everybody is thinking, any additions, omissions, and then also we'll need to talk about how do we move forward from here. And I've asked Roberta that question, and Cody, I know, will give us some thoughts on that. We can talk about that a little bit too, but so again, we have this workshop, so we don't want to take too much time, but if there's anything sort of big assessment of just kind of tone, things missing, I don't think we need to get into line editing at this point.
Well, thank you for compiling this. I appreciate like having it in this format. Last time, John Potter had mentioned that when we were talking about how to define Fort Getty or its identity, that we should not think about, include the word military fort.
Oh.
And in the second paragraph under introduction and overview, we have a little blurb about that.
Yeah,
So I would take that out because I feel like that constrains us. And I feel like the history, that should go into the history of
Okay.
it, but not be part of the defining feature of it.
do other people agree with that? I feel like it's so much about Fort Getty.
I'm not actually sure if I'm not sure I intended you to take from my words what you seem to have taken.
Okay.
The only thing I was sort of objecting to is it was if the history of the park started with the fort,
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
not that it was a military fort, right? I mean, it is what it is or what it was. I just thought that by only focusing on that, it also omitted a long tail of history
Mhm.
ahead of it, right? So personally, I like that second paragraph.
Okay.
I don't mind if we elaborate further on what it was and put it back later, but I don't have any objection to the second paragraph. The one thing I did, I mean, both earlier in this meeting and when reading this is, I thought in our last meeting, we talked about the moniker for the Fort Getty Recreation Area as the moniker we were going to go forward with, but none of us have internalized that. So maybe I misread our last conversation.
I guess I was thinking that's how we're going to recommend it. I
Okay.
wasn't thinking that's what we would, I'm open to what people want to do. Fort Getty Park, Fort Getty Recreation. I mean, we would be, I don't think it goes by that,
fine.
right?
I think that a recommendation that talks about how we reframe the narrative about the park
Mhm.
and the communication of it, a broad recommendation that probably picks up not just what's its name, how do we talk about it on the website, but I think that recommendation on reframing is a good one. I'm okay with it. I just now I understand why it's not in here.
Yeah.
So under the staffing, and then also under benchmarking, one of the big takeaways for me from the benchmarking work I did is the Second Beach Family Campground served as a model of simplicity globally for us, like a simple management model. So, there's one person who manages the camping enterprise, and then they have the two on-site managers. And so with the reduced staff expenses, we're able to increase revenue, and then we don't have, this need to fill all these job vacancies. And so I just see Second Beach overall as a simple model that we could look to. But they also have the seasonal only component of it.
So that would be something in the recommendations
Mhm.
to consider.
Right. I think we could simplify our campground operations using them as a model.
Anything missing, anything offensive, anything off the mark? Anything?
Oh, the goals? Our goals weren't in the,
I didn't put them in because we didn't agree to them yet, and I
yeah,
wasn't.
but like a
Yeah.
placeholder though, maybe for them in the somewhere after the vision, the guiding principles.
Mhm. And I was able to not break open public meetings and deal and work with one person. So thank you, John, for reviewing these and helping work through this. So in terms of next steps, there's a question, Cody, of whether or not we can actually work out of a Google Doc and not have conversations in the document, but actually put in text and then
Yeah,
bring.
I believe that would still be considered open meeting violation just because all 5 could be on that document at once and be working on language at the same time. So I think Roberta's recommendation was to essentially each mark up the draft report with your own edits and then send them to me and Marissa. And we would be able to collate them. And then I would say, similar as the policy workshop, doing a draft report workshop. That way you can have like a line edit time frame. Yeah, I would just advise against the Google Doc.
Okay. All right. And I'll just not be editor in chief. I'll just compile. Does that work for people?
Okay.
Okay. I don't think we need to do that now. I think if people feel pretty comfortable with what's there, there's going to be plenty of time to edit it. But when it comes to the recommendations, we'll have to figure out how to, I think we'll get a lot done today, hopefully, in terms of that and begin to consolidate.
Just one other thing about, I don't know if this is going to be practically possible, but I think when we've finished the report, one potential addition to it would be a resolution that makes it easy for the town council to accept the report in all or its most important entirety.
Like drafting a resolution for them to consider and pass?
Yeah.
I like it. Ed, do you have any comments on anything we've been talking about?
No, just related to the policy discussion. So I think it would be important that the staff have the opportunity to give you, I mean, Ray could put together some thoughts. We don't need to offer testimony, but Ray could put together some thoughts about some changes that they think might be helpful in developing the policy. So
Great. Great. Thank you. How about you, Ray? Anything you want to comment on? No.
No, I think as the discussions continue on, if there's questions from the committee, just let me know what the questions are. And there's a lot of thoughts, a lot of different viewpoints here. And so, I'm just kind of listening. And if you need any guidance, just ask and I will give you my opinion.
Great. Thank you. All right. The next item is new business, and it's the Fort Getty touch and go dock exemption and or water reclassification letter. So Jim.
All right, let me bring everyone up to speed as to where it stands as of just yesterday. So as we all know, the desire for a touch and go dock at Fort Getty goes long before the commission was charged to look into this, many, many years. My communication with CRMC recently, as recent as a week ago today, I again posed the question to them about the possibility of either a water reclassification and or the use of a special exception. Probably within minutes of my email to them on that topic, I got an email back. And I'll read you just a small piece of that. Notwithstanding the council's prohibition against construction of recreational boating facilities in type 1 waters, the council recognizes that some residential boating facilities may have pre-existed in type 1 waters prior to the formation of the council. The council's ultimate goal is to remove said structures and restore the areas involved to be free of all recreational boating facilities. Taking that, I went back and said, forget reclassifying waters. What about a special exemption? Of which they had provided me with a rather extensive list of possible special exemptions. So I've begun the process with them. And yesterday I received a long list of policies that in my eventual submission of a special request, a special exemption request, I need to cover how a touch and go dock would satisfy the lengthy list of requirements. So I got that long list from them, from the Red Book yesterday. I've just started to digest and get familiar with it. I do intend on following through with submitting a special exception request to them, but I think it's probably going to also involve the use of hiring an engineering firm, which would design a touch and go dock with all, which ensures that it meets CRMC Red Book requirements and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying this is out of the realm of possibility, but it will be something that may take some time to get before them.
It'll be touch and go.
It would be very touch and go with CRMC.
Okay, so there's no request here for this body of any kind to do a letter. No. Good.
Nothing here today.
Right, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If I understood what you said, with respect to, I mean, basically the ramp, the outhauls, and the pier, those are all legacy boating facilities that, again, their guidance has suggested they would like to fall into disrepair and eliminate. I'm being negative.
I take your interpretation differently.
Okay. And so we've mentioned this exemption in the context of the ramp and a touch and go dock, but are you thinking of pursuing an exemption for essentially the entire northern tip?
Not at this point. To me, it's just a touch and go dock that would sit alongside the existing ramp.
Okay.
And
All right,
that
thank
is
you.
what the call has been for all
I
along.
know. Okay, thanks.
So Jim, you interpret their response as saying there is no ability to ask for a reclassification of water type
Exactly.
because it just flies in the, I had read the Red Book and read exactly what they quoted. It is flies in the face of what they consider type.
Yeah, their last comment was, if your organization is planning on pursuing this project as a water reclassification, you should be aware that it will receive adverse recommendation from CRMC.
Wow.
Okay.
Marissa, I think that it actually impinges on our previous discussion. I mean, not at least implicitly. My take on this is for our report, we might have a long list of ideas about what happens to the waterfront assets. It's always been an overlap between the Harbor Commission and this committee, but I feel that we might comment on things that people wanted, comment on things that we would like to do, but also put forward the challenges that exist and probably not expend a ton of ink on it. Although, having said that, the one area that has to do with the boat ramp that I think we should make sure we discuss thoroughly, including in our workshop upcoming, is the traffic flow to and from the boat ramp and around CISF.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that there is a pending House bill to have CRMC set up a review of water types throughout the state. I don't know if that's going to, I'm sure they're going to be leaning towards tightening water types rather than loosening them. But in this case, it just, we're talking about major town recreation facilities that really should be in type 2 waters.
And a special exception will take that in consideration. So
Yeah.
I just need to be sure that the assent form that I submit includes as much detail as to how not only this committee, but the user community
Right.
may benefit from something as simple as a small touch and go.
Right. There is, I assume we have an approved harbor management plan.
We
With-
have a current harbor management plan. The new one is before the CRMC.
Okay, and how does that deal with Fort Getty, or does it refer to it at all?
Nope.
No reference.
Okay, the next item. And Rich, I'm sorry that you had sent around that document. I don't know if we actually spent enough time talking about it, but maybe we'll be talking about it during the workshop and certainly at a future meeting.
Repeat that, I didn't.
The document that you sent around, it was written
Okay.
around goals. I think it will probably come up and weave in through. Okay. Okay, so the next item is public comments. Are there any scheduled? No? Are there, is anybody here like to? Cheryl? What up?
Hello. Oh,
Hey.
thank you. Okay. Good afternoon. Nice to see you. Just wanted to, a couple of comments. I hear diversity
Sorry,
come
if
up.
you could just say your name and address.
I'm
for the
sorry,
record.
Cody, Cheryl Boyd, 7 Stanchion Street. I've heard diversity come up in regard to the survey. I did see that myself, and I thought it was more aligned to the amenities at Fort Getty, a diverse amount of amenities. So I just wanted to bring that up. Site size, also, we should recommend that we can park 2 cars over on the campsites at Fort Getty. And then for the overflow parking, I don't know that it's really necessary that you have to put a user to that space. You know, if it's available, park. You know, does it have to be for pavilion, for campers, for guests? It could be just for anybody. I think, you know, being able to park anywhere, you may see most campers may not have guests. That lot could be empty when it could be utilized by someone else. So just maybe not specifically marking them for a specific use. And I did see in Bill's request a 30 amp electric. I don't think that really works at all for any type of camping. It's impossible to kind of manage the electricity. It really is very difficult. So I think everything would need to be upgraded. The staffing that was just mentioned at Fort Getty and a mention of maybe needing 1 person, those folks are dealing with more than just Fort Getty. They're parks and recs, they're at beaches, they're at the pavilion rentals, they're everywhere. So make sure that, you know, that's considered unless you're going to be putting those folks into like a silo. You can only work on pavilion, so just keep that in mind. And then I'm submitting a comment to put on written submission. To begin, I wanted to clearly state that I support a minimum of 75 RV sites at Fort Getty. The level of capacity is consistent with resident survey input and helps preserve RV camping as a meaningful and functional component of the park. I also support setting aside a reasonable number of RV sites for short-term stays. I think that's important. People get to see the park, learn about Jamestown, and decide if they think it's something for them, if they want to become a seasonal resident. So that improves access without displacing seasonal campers. My concern is specifically with the proposal to introduce a lottery system for seasonal RV campers. That concern is logistical rather than philosophical. A lottery does not currently exist for RV camping at Fort Getty, and introducing one would represent a significant change in policy and practice. So I would ask the committee to consider a parallel that already exists in Jamestown: boat moorings. Moorings, like RV sites, are permitted use, support seasonal recreation, and involve limited shared public resources. Moorings are managed through waiting lists, not lotteries, even though wait times can be as extremely long as, of today, 2 years to 25 years, depending on mooring class. Despite these long waits, the town has not adopted a lottery system for moorings, in large part because predictability and long-term planning are fundamental to how people invest and use those assets. A copy of the current waiting list is attached for reference. Seasonal RV camping operates in much the same way. Campers make long-term plans and significant financial commitments based on expectations of stable access. Introducing a lottery would disrupt the predictability. Seasonal campers cannot find alternative campgrounds on short notice. Most seasonal campgrounds have their own long waiting lists and require commitments well in advance. Without at least a year of advance notice or more, a lottery risks displacing people who have no realistic alternative campground for that season. So based on my recollection from past committee meetings, the waiting list for seasonal and transient RV sites at Fort Getty has been typically relatively small, often on the older of fewer than 20 people. And I have seen some movement from the list into both seasonal and transient sites over the past couple of years. So, in other words, the existing permit-based system does not provide opportunities over time without the use of a lottery. There is also a practical issue on the other side of the lottery system. Many people on waiting lists for seasonal recreation, including RV camping and moorings, maintain their names on multiple lists at the same time. So if someone were awarded a Fort Getty RV site through a lottery, they may not be able to accept it because they have already committed elsewhere. This introduces churn, redraws, an additional administrative burden, which undermines the clarity and fairness of the lottery that the lottery is intended to provide. So I would also note the significant financial investment many seasonal campers have made in purchasing RVs specifically sized to fit Fort Getty site dimensions and electrical layout. These purchases are not casual or short-term decisions. They are made with the understanding that Fort Getty operates on a predictable, permit-based model similar to other long-term recreational uses in town. A lottery system introduces uncertainty that directly affects the value and instability of those investments. It would also introduce ongoing administration by the town, including rules for eligibility, advance notice, declines, reassignments, enforcement, and resident priority. This represents a permanent administrative responsibility, not a one-time solution. Before adopting a system that adds complexity and uncertainty, I believe it is worth considering whether keeping at least 75 RV sites and increasing the short-term access already addresses concerns in a simpler, more predictable, and less disruptive manner, consistent with how Jamestown manages other long-term seasonal recreation uses. I appreciate the work of the ad hoc committee and its responsibility to make informed recommendations. I hope these logistical considerations as helpful as you evaluate options for the future management of RV camping at Fort Getty. Respectfully, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. Anna.
And yeah, I was going to say, if you want to provide a copy, I can make sure it gets into the record.
Hello, Hannah Sweat, 34 Emerson. I just wanted to point out a few things concerning our lease and what was presented in the ad hoc, I guess it's the preliminary report. CISF has shared use and primary use. And in our primary use, we actually have 10 spots. I guess it's south, where it says in your report that there are 7 spots, there are actually 10. It's as noted in our lease, and I can give you this copy of the lease. It's also hard to understand exactly from the drawings, but we have also 10,500 square feet of shared use where it looks like trees are going and it might not be accessible to us on what's drawn. But this is all in CISF's lease, so this isn't anything that's new. The one new thing I had was that overflow parking. It's hard to know what the overflow parking now is meant to be, but if there's any reduction of overflow parking, we think that would be tough to manage. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Meg?
Meg Miles, 7 Feluca Avenue, Jamestown. So I know when you move to the workshop, we're not allowed to speak, so I just wanted to ask a couple of questions to consider when you get to the workshop. And first, as Hannah mentioned, overflow parking, I actually will defer that to Ray because I think any reduction in the overflow, I think, is problematic for when there are big pavilion events. I think it's less related to us. But, as we move forward and we have events that happen at the same time with approval of events at the pavilion, the bigger that space, the better for all of us, I think. So just wanted to say that. And then currently as you drive in the main road of Fort Getty, as you're on the road to go to the ramp on the right-hand side, that east side, there's there's a boat trailer parking. And most of the drawings, it looks like that's been eliminated. And so I just was wondering what's happening with that. And then along those same lines, on the opposite side of that same road, facing those trucks or those boats that will be parked there, it looks like there's bushes or trees or something going in. And I do think that would be problematic for those people backing their trucks and boats into their parking spots. Plus, that road is much busy and very busy and heavily used. So adding something that could delay or could cause a sight issue for a driver to see a child, a dog coming across the road, I think is definitely a worry for me. And then my last comment is I love having a bike path, but I think having a bike path that leads to the boat ramp where people are backing their trucks and trailers backwards is a really, really bad idea. So I think, again, that lower road, it's heavily used. There's a lot of pressure in the summer. So as you move forward in your discussions about what you're going to have happen, I think trying to alleviate that pressure should be something that should be very considered. Okay,
Thank you.
you.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Kathleen Brown, 995 Fort Getty Road. I think as you are moving forward with continuing RV camping, because we've determined that the revenue is incredibly important for the town to maintain that, what I think now going forward in your report needs to really clearly state, are you continuing to support a particular cohort of RV campers that reside at Fort Getty year after year after year, and that particular cohort of campers? Or are you putting forward a report and recommendations that are looking at the best practices of what RV camping could or should be? And how then would we as a town manage that kind of art? Because those are really two different things. And living on Fort Getty Road, I'm going to say something that is like the opposite of NIMBY, because yes, it is quieter to have the same cohort of neighbors who are at Fort Getty year after year after year. And I know that's maybe a little bit easier for the staff to manage, but that does not actually reflect best use for revenue options, and it does not represent greater access for park use. And it also does not necessarily translate into better economic stimulus for our town businesses, because newcomers to town are going to be that much more inclined to visit the different restaurants and business establishments than the people who are there year after year, summer after summer. I can say from anecdotal, qualitative observations, midsummer, peak season, walking around out at the park on a Tuesday morning, a Wednesday morning, a Thursday morning, it's actually quite a ghost town on the top of that hill. So you hear the buzz hum of refrigeration going to keep everything cold for when the families return to enjoy their RVs for the weekend. But it's really, so it's kind of I'm going to say, hoarding of space for a period of time that's actually not even being recreated in, not even necessarily being used. So we really do need to think about what the culture of the RV truly is and what we're truly preserving. I see the Stop and Shop Peapod truck go up and down Fort Getty Road many times a week. So I'm not quite sure the anecdotal reference to the campers' support of McQuaid's is quite accurate. I don't think we've ever truly been able to measure the accuracy of that. So I think there's a lot of anecdotal references that have been made on either side of use, best use, historic use, that we really need to take with a grain of salt moving forward, because I think we haven't been able to measure some of these ideas. So I want to lend my support for Bill Salmon's idea around the lottery, because I think that that does, in support of what I was just saying, the idea of lottery. I like what he said of, if you get the lottery, you can then renew for 3 years, because I don't want to displace someone's investment and have them to think every winter about where they're going to go for the summer with their RV. So I think putting some kind of 3-year renew option on it gives people ample planning time to consider exploring in their RV other places and allowing new people to come and enjoy the beautiful peninsula on Connecticut Island. So those are my thoughts.
Anyone else? Okay. So we didn't receive any other communications. At this point, will be the ones that may have come through will be posted in the next agenda. So the next item is agenda items and committee schedule for the future. I think we will probably devote a chunk of, if not the entire next meeting, to policy discussion, though I know you're not here, Bill, so we'll probably won't make any decisions, or we'll think about that. We'll think about how to do that. So are you here in May? Okay. Anything else that people want to see on future agenda items, the next meeting? Okay. All right, so the next item is we will go to the Fort Getty ad hoc committee work session. We'll come down there with Eric.
Yep, if I can just have a couple minutes just to set up the mics
Sure.
and everything. Thank you.
Cody, do you know offhand when our next meeting is scheduled? I know you had done a poll.
They said,
Yep, it'll be April 27th at 1 p.m. It's another
Great.
Tuesday.
Thank you.
We don't know. 1, 2. All right, Marissa, I think we're all set to go. Just a reminder, just if everybody can make sure you try to speak into a mic to try to catch that voice. Thank you.
Okay. Not working. Hello, hello. Did it work? Yeah, okay, great. So the workshop will begin. Eric, do you want to tell us up front how you want to?
Sure, thank you. I think I'd like to run through some material. We may have easels. We also have a PowerPoint. You can see it there, so that might be fast. And I'll probably join you at the table as well.
So in general, though, will you be walking us through kind of the work you've done based on our last meeting or the meetings, the input you've gotten, share with us? Could you just give us an overview of how you see this going? Because I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Sure. So what I have are a couple of concepts that we developed based on, we talked about 75 and we talked about 50 in what I call the series 1, sort of our first look at it. And folks reacted differently, said 50 maybe was not enough for the RV site, 75 is what we have currently. Is there something in between? So we've developed a couple concepts based on the RV because that's the most intensive use. And I know there's other pieces that we need to get to in the plan, but sort of organizing the RVs is an important sort of central part of the discussion. It's going to free us then to go on to other things. I did hear a couple of comments today that I want to go back to about decoupling that because maybe I can give you some ideas, whether you advance those ideas or not, but at least there's a couple conversation pieces. So we've got some studies on the RVs. We talk a little bit about the tents. We looked at idea about just shrinking the tents down a little bit if we were to keep them down at the entrance. We also have some concepts on circulation that we can talk about, which is important as we work through the RV and the land use piece, the circulation discussions coming into focus. And then also some input on the fortifications, just some additional inventory that we've done and sort of different pathways for opportunities. So those are about the 3 big pieces. And then working on the table, certainly sit down and draw. I think coming out of these concepts, the committee may say, we like this, we don't like this, let's sketch this, or particularly circulation might be something that we work on together. So we'll see how time permits, but that's generally what I have.
Okay, great. Yes, at some point, I was hoping, I'm not sure if we can do this today, but I'd love to be able to, maybe is this decoupling idea, are there certain things we know we're in agreement on? And then we'll need to focus on the areas that we may not be, but maybe I'm jumping ahead, so you go.
No, like just on the topic of decoupling, which I heard today, and just maybe something to think about. Will there be camping in the future? Yes. Right. So does that help you think about the restroom need and that facility? and I don't know that you're there yet, but just sort of asking yourselves that big picture question, there's going to be this recommendation. So we have a viable renovation plan, and I think we have a viable new restroom plan for the lower restroom. So most of the concepts we're talking about today don't keep the upper restroom, and that may be something you want to revisit, but sort of the assumption's been made at this point is that we're looking at a very small restroom facility to support the marine use, and we'll work on locating that down the line. And then this relies on the lower restroom location either being rehabilitated or a new restroom, constructed just up gradient from that. So that was one of the decoupling conversations. I thought the conversations about the trails were interesting and one that we should think about, and there may be opportunity to start sooner rather than later on that. Although I will say in some areas, we probably need to think about new alignments. We're so close to the edge. We're dealing with this in other state parks, coastal retreat, and just planning for the loss of that coastal bank and inevitable erosion. And there's some things that we can do to stabilize those banks, but pulling those trails back, closing down a couple of access points to, again, try to mitigate the erosion will add to longevity of the site and improve the site. So those are things that are low-hanging fruit that are based in sort of planting and vegetation management and pathways, but easily could be planned for and started. And I think, in my view, need to be done as part of sort of a comprehensive look ahead. And the other was a vegetation management plan. We're challenged by the overgrowth of invasive plants there. And that involves a inventory process of documenting what's there, working with CRMC, and then proactively managing the invasive plants out and replacing them with plants that provide habitat. We can't just mow over to the edge of the bank. We're going to have to restore that, but it can be done appropriately. And there's a lot of opportunity to start that in like the off season's a good time potentially. When things aren't fruiting, and it makes it a little bit easier to manage invasive plants that way. So there's a couple of items just the decoupling conversation they had earlier. From that, we can jump into some concepts. Okay, I'll just let you, just keep going. I'll tell you when. So these are just sort of background. We for organizational purposes, because I think, and if we just go back one or two, no, the other way. We just called the first studies series 1, which were we did one with 50 and one with 75, and this one.
75.
No, we'll keep going back then. So this one, conceptual anyway, what we talked about at that workshop was sort of consolidating all of the RV sites together, keeping some of the roadway network, and then potentially extending a roadway network to the south, closer to Battery to Sard, essentially establishing these longer blocks that are more regular. This eliminated a lot of the little cut-through roads, the zigzag pattern of the streets. And, again, these green areas, we're not really suggesting what's happening there yet, other than it's sort of freeing up space for use. We did hear from CISF earlier, and they're right, there are flex use areas that we will define in the next round, that they have a right of access and use for parking and other events, as well as their prescribed activities in certain areas as well that they are able to conduct.
Just tell me where that is now on this map.
Sure.
He's telling me it's to the north of that building.
Yeah, Alyssa. So that's the two shaded brown areas that you can see, more or less. So that graphic in front of you doesn't distinguish between the different types of uses that they have through the lease agreement. So they have sort of what they call use and control areas, which is the core where their building is built. And that includes the area right across the street, Fort Getty Road, to the east. So there's a block to the east that's shaded brown. That's also exclusive use for them. And then they have a shaded area on with 10 parking spaces. We had it mislabeled as 7, but that is correct. I looked at the lease, and there are 10 spaces on the upper road. These are their exclusive use. Then they have an area north towards the boat ramp, which is field space that may be accessed for organizations, CISF included, for a variety of uses, which may be playfields, boat storage, picnics, events, and so on. So they have a couple different types of uses that they're allowed and a couple different footprints associated with those uses. We do have a graphic that shows that more in more detail later in the slideshow.
That area to the north, that lot up towards the boat ramp, that's shared, isn't it? Doesn't the boat ramp get used to that as well? Or not?
The limit in brown is the limit of their what's called flex use. So, you know, in theory, they may be accessed by CISF. So in theory, it's flex use, so it can also be used by other entities as well. It's not an exclusive use for that area.
You're going to determine primary versus flex use? Is that what you're going to?
Yeah, I think Alyssa can just show you.
That'd be helpful.
There's a demarcation. So their primary area is A, which is the building and the workshop footprint, and that includes the septic field. Correct. So that's A. And then next to it is what's called B, which is the northern flex. That's, yep. And the 10 spaces on that street, Alyssa, that's A1. Yep, right up there on the top. And then across the road is A2. Yep, right.
What's that lower square on the main road just below A1 or A?
Yeah, so A2 is exclusive use. That's across the road. It's where they have their restrooms currently. So they have right of use and control of that area. Yeah, Richard, that's called flex use. So the definition is fields that may be accessed by CISF or permitted a company or organization for a variety of uses, which includes play fields, temporary boat storage, picnics, events, event parking.
So there's two areas that are flex.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so that's what, when Hannah was speaking to it, she's just, and she's right, you know, our plan at this point, we're not getting into the details of that. We're aware that those restrictions exist. And the flex use is I guess, again, more flexible arrangement where others can use that space as well. It's not exclusive to them in the areas B and E. And then towards Bill, the furthermost tip is undefined, the area of green as you approach the boat ramp. And I believe the lease has been circulated too in previous, so for a more detailed look at it, but we can share that with you too. So I think, you know, probably the ones to be most aware of are A1 and 2. And of course, A prime, which is just itself the center where they're building the facility now. So the piece of land across the street is one that they're currently using, and so that's part of the agreement. So other questions about where we were with kind of 75 and this idea of kind of grouping them all together, and in this scenario we took everything kind of up the hill and to the west. And then I think we had some good conversation about is there value in that, having all that green space to the east? What if we consolidated the RVs down into a more central location and tried to open up that western side for more public park use?
Or the other way, I've been thinking about that is like, what is the footprint that these take up, right? It's hard to kind of see that.
Yeah, you can probably do that right now. We can run the math
Both
on
ways.
65 or 63 spaces at 1,800. So yeah, there's some math we can work through. I mean, I guess at this point, I did hear some comments earlier, and I think there are some decision points that can affect like yield. So we'll talk about that too as we work through this conversation. I think this is just sort of structurally, organizationally, green space to the west, we've eliminated some streets to the north and RV sites to the north, a much larger green space to the north as well. And so this concept, I think there was good discussion on this, which was also maybe 50 is sort of taking off more than we want. That's a lot of green space. Is there something that's in the middle? And that's where we jumped off into the next series of studies.
The point of my question was, if we're trying to balance many different principles here, we're trying to provide a great experience for RV users, for tent campers, providing more open space. Where should that be? How much are each of these doing to achieve some of those things?
So all of these studies, I think, anticipated or proposed the removal of the westernmost road. And that is, if you do that and you eliminate that bay of RVs, it's a little over an acre of land. If you're sort of looking for the metrics of these different options, it's about 1.25 acres that currently is RVs that now would be available for green space on that western side.
And this one, Eric, you've also opened up, this is the Jim Hagney model. You've opened up to the left as well, to the south. The tent camping is that's now open space here.
Right. So based on the previous ones, there was interest in the battery and some of the things we had talked about the battery, interest in the quality of that space. And I think there's even more potential beyond. We'll talk about this in greater detail. So we're just kind of looking at what if we didn't allow at least RVs, because right now there's several RVs that kind of encroach into that southern end. Maybe tent camping would happen here or could happen here in that space. This doesn't preclude that. It's just sort of the assumption was we'd move tent camping out to the entrance. We'd look at organizing the RVs in a sort of central community that occupies the middle of the space of the peninsula, and then the perimeter we look at. The east side is pretty heavily programmed, so we'll talk more about that. The west side is a little more flex, and the north side has some programming, but there also, if we free this up, there could be more public use of the north side as well. So concept level, and this is outdated again, CISF they have 10 spaces on the street there. This total is 63 RV sites, and we've kind of layered them in rows with the idea of like a center green space that maybe allows passage through east to west. So that's what you're seeing, the trail that goes through the middle in green space and picnic tables. And that could be used by the RV folks, or that could be used by anyone that wants to cross the site in the middle instead of just having sort of these rows that you can't get through. At least conceptually thought it might be interesting to be able to make that connection across.
Number of RV sites you're giving up by doing that. If that was the footprint for RVs, is that another 10 you could put in there? So we're back to 73 if we wanted to with different configuration.
That's where we're jumping into some of the details. So no, let's talk about it, because we can come back to it. It wouldn't be 10. It might be, if you look at that, you might gain 2 per row, out of it. So yeah, something like 8. But what I would say is, someone said, oh, you should be able to park 2 cars with your RV. We're using a fairly narrow module at this point. We're using a 30 by 60 footprint, an 1,800 square foot footprint, which you have today in row F, right? And block F is that module. So we built it off a module that exists currently, which is this narrower block. They're slightly deeper than 60 feet. I think they're 72 feet or something. They're a little bit deeper, but we sort of looked at that and said, okay, we've got a layout here that we're familiar with that works. If we want to introduce multiple cars onto the space, then we might need to get a little wider than 30 feet, because it's either you're stacking them and that can get challenging, or they're too next to each other, and we want to make sure there's enough room. And we have a detail of this later in the plan. So we'll come back to it. So your questions about yield, and we can work on that. This is sort of about concentration of use and sort of how it looks, how it feels. Do we like the path through the middle? Does it not make sense? Do we like the elimination of some of these roads and what it may do to free up space? And we can go to the next one, Cody. That'd be fine too.
The schematic that you have without the landscaping, you just took the current footprint of those RV sites and just moved them. And then with this one here, you have them all being the same. So like, for example, like this schematic, I could see some very small sites right here that looks like they're just, they're all just not uniformly sized. Is that what you did? You just took what it's like there and just moved them with the same like dimensions?
Well, do you remember how those early studies were done?
Yeah, so there's like a lot of these renderings, and they all seem to have different shapes, like RV sizes, but then the one with the landscaping, all of the sizes of the sites are like exactly the same, like uniform size?
Yes, series 1 was based on the size.
Okay.
Series 2, uniform.
That sounds like it's a net reduction for most sites over current, right? Okay.
It's about, depending, it's a 25% reduction. The average size, if we take everything, I think it's on here.
That's where.
So we're down from that now. The discussion of we want to park multiple cars, then maybe we get wider. And again, yield is a piece of it. It's based on the modularity of the shapes, but kind of footprint and land use and how it occupies. If we have a direction on some of these ideas, then we can go back and say, okay, let's widen these out to fit 2 cars. Let's eliminate the green space in the middle. What does our yield look like if we make those adjustments?
On the car situation, what have you assumed for cars?
We're set up right now for 1 to stack in front. So it's a 60-foot deep module that we're using. And so, say it's a 30-foot RV and there's 30 feet in front, you might be able to fit 2 cars. If it's a 40-foot RV, you're probably fitting just 1 vehicle, in front of it.
So if we were just to think about, I understand what you said about the cars per RV on the RV location, but if we were thinking about the total parking implicit in, say, 1.1 versus any of the twos we can get to pretty quickly because I think all the parking spaces are largely laid out here. But I suspect we need to think about the parking on an aggregate basis as well as on a per site basis, right? Because it's easier to say you only get 1 car per space if it's just down the hill to put your other car, right?
Yeah, that was were you thinking people would only have 1 car, or if they had 2 cars, they'd park 1 in their site and 1 in one of these green spaces you designated as parking?
Right. So the concept on the parking is at the perimeter, and I think that would be the second vehicle. Or, now it's fluid. The committee staff probably has input on that as well, whether 2 spaces are right at site, and then is it stacked, 2 stacked vehicles, or are we going to allow 2 next to each other? Because that's when we start to push the shoulders out on the widths of each of these modules. And so to park 2 cars next to each other, have room to your neighbors, have room for people to walk by with coolers, and 30 feet really won't work. We'll probably need to increase, that width. And so then again, things like the green space in the middle might go away because we're going to add 5 feet to every bay if we like this pattern. The idea conceptually was that there would be a dedicated area for RV camper, extra additional cars parking, and that would be separate from people that are just coming to the park. That, if you want to come and look at the ocean, park in that western lot at the top. You want to make use of the green space or walk your dog or, go through the trail network. There should be parking that's not occupied by RV camper as a second or third vehicle, but is dedicated to people that are coming to the park to do other things. So the idea of this perimeter kind of loop road is to provide modules of parking along that outer edge. This doesn't have any landscaping on the exterior. We haven't really dug into that yet. It's just kind of suggesting some concepts on how the layout might work.
Cody, can I ask you a question? Because Ray's not here, is he? Oh, that's Ray, sorry. I can't tell from here. The parking,
Yes.
how many times is the RV guest parking full?
I don't think I've ever seen the RV guest parking. I don't think that I've ever seen the RV guest parking full.
Okay, and right now, they're allowed one car
Two
per-
cars per
in a spot?
2 cars per site. And then any additional cars that have to go
Go
to
to the
the
RV.
visitor parking. And then usually they're not bringing, it's not their own vehicle, it's the visitor park.
Right,
visitor
and they have to pay to go into that, but it's never full. You've never seen it?
I've seen it full for events, like if we utilize it for event parking, I've seen it full, but not for.
Right, not for
Right,
RVs.
correct. I've never.
So that space is probably excessive.
You're
that-
right, exactly, yeah. It's kind of like an overflow type situation. It's not only used for, even though it's RV overflow, I mean, we'll have people will park there for other reasons as well. If they're just in the park, it's kind of just like one of those parking areas that's more close to the inside of the park. But we ask that the RV residents have their guests park there.
Okay,
Isn't the policy that they can have two vehicles, one being the RV vehicle or the pickup truck? Two vehicles. Doing a Google search, Eric, it looks like a 30 by 60 site allows for two vehicles.
It does. I mean, we can
So
make it fit. It's just sort of, I mean, if you compare it to Middletown, it's quite generous. Right. So it's just the level of accommodation that you're looking to get to. But if the desire is to have two, we can work up the layouts that show that, and we can, for comparison, you can look at 30, 35, and 40. We can run those through and you can see what that looks like in terms of yield. I think if people don't find interest in the common green space or the pathway through, then that's an easy adjustment to make and say, it's a nice concept, but we'd rather get more yield and we'd rather maybe adjust the spaces somewhat. Then we can go back into it, take that out and dial in the layout to accommodate 2 cars per site.
I have 2 questions, and I don't know whether Ray or Eric is best to answer the first one. And it's today, what's the diversity of widths on a site? We're talking about 30 by 60 and uniform in the Series 2 scenarios.
Yeah, if you look on that map there, I think Eric has it all really well organized. I could give you like off the top of my head, but it looks like he actually has them all measured out. Yeah, it varies not wildly, but it varies from row to row.
Yeah, okay, I understand. I'm trying to get a sense, though, of how we had a discussion earlier about how we would limit how we should think about policies to limit how much auxiliary structure goes along with a camper.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering whether or not 30 feet wide means that you definitely need a policy, or whether structurally it's just impractical to try to build something.
What I would say is the decks that you're talking about, the decks that they bring in, they're generally around, some of them are a little more elaborate, some of them are a little smaller, but generally they're around the same size, or people just don't have them. They'll put a outside rug down or something like that. Has been my observation there. I think if you unify the size of the site, having a policy that says you can have auxiliary structures or whatever, or I guess regulating that, I think is a good idea, honestly. But I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, I think what I heard, well, not really, but I think what I heard from you is that 30 feet wide is still plenty of room to put a deck. And so if you declared that that was the size, because you want to keep a couple of cars easily to accommodate them. Okay.
You guys are way ahead of me. So we'll try to catch up. So what we did is we just kind of plugged in that module. And again, it's a starting point. It's based on some of the dimensions that we had. You were asking about what we sort of knew about widths. So prior master plan, Had talked about 40 by 60. Area F, which I had mentioned, was kind of a template. It's 33 by 70. It's a little deeper just because that's where the road fell. 40 by 65, that's what's in area A. So there is quite a range. These are some concepts we did. We just linked together two different templates, one where there's maybe a patio or a deck. You can see it there, the RV, one vehicle in front, a fire pit. And then you can see that dashed line is about a 5 foot offset off of the line. So it gives you a sense of, we can fit the two cars, to your point, next to each other. There gets to be sort of a density there that now, because the spaces vary so much, visually, you don't feel that density. With the uniformity of the spaces, it will feel more dense, and we'd like to introduce landscaping and other things. So I think if we're stacking two cars, then we're going to be maybe looking at 35 feet or something, bringing that a little bit wider.
So this is based on Block F, right? And so there are already people with RVs and parking are they fitting two cars in Block F right now?
They do. I've seen different ways they do. They get creative depending on everybody's car is different. I've seen them there with a Prius and they'll, tow behind their gray water in their Prius, but I've seen them with big trucks. So they have to get creative sometimes to fit both of their vehicles on their site.
And then I did look at it's Fisherman's Memorial Campground that allows up to two vehicles, but one of them is a drivable RV. So that was what that came from. But Second Beach did say that one of the considerations is that RVs are getting bigger. And so that's something we need to think about, balancing RV size and parking with these site sizes.
I'm sorry, these are shown at 30, just a 30-foot RV. So, basically there's 30 feet available for cars and other space. If you want to be really efficient and back all the way in, you could get two cars depending on their size. Not two pickup trucks, but a Jeep and something smaller might fit stacked in.
I think, Ray, in a prior conversation, you talked about there's a real value for two cars.
Yeah, generally you're going to have two people in the RV and those people are independent, at times independent from each other, right? So there's someone comes down after work and they're going to park there. Then somebody else is coming down at a different time. It's people. I mean, everybody has their own vehicle. It's very convenient to have your own vehicle. Having to figure out how to travel with only one vehicle with another person, it's inconvenient. But and really what you're talking about is having them park in an auxiliary spot. All right, here's your one spot here. The extra vehicle goes there. So that's less inconvenient, than not having the vehicle there, but it's somewhat inconvenient to have to walk all the way across to get your vehicle. But I mean, that's just for the committee to talk about and say that's what it's going to be. It's, we're changing the size of the sites and changing amenities, and this is just what we're dealing with. So.
And you've had no problem with double parking, people getting angry at each other?
No, I haven't had any issues with that. There were concerns a few years ago with density, like Eric just kind of was talking about, that we would have to police if you had a third vehicle, they're just stopping by for a second, they're just dropping something off, they're just saying hi, or even people who are in the park that don't want to walk all the way to the other side will drive over there or whatever, that kind of thing. And it got a little crazy during like 4th of July weekend and things like that. So our park staff needed to police that and go and say, guys, there's two vehicles per site, go park in the other, visitor parking. And then you got to remember, say it's pouring rain out or it's the middle of the night and then people don't want to walk, from those distances. So there's those factors, but we've managed that with our staff.
John.
Last time we talked about potentially changing the orientation from, the long axis of an RV being east-west to maybe being northwest, southeast, or, putting them at an angle. At the time, it sort of fit inside of the roadway, especially when we were talking about reinstating the original road at the back of the I just wondered, this series of models doesn't choose to do that. I'm wondering what you thought about, what we should take from that edit.
Yeah. I would say not to read too much into it, we did a very modular layout to try to consolidate the RVs to the center. I think we can look at that, and we've begun to look at the diagonal. I think for the higher turnover spaces, the diagonal space might make sense, because it's going to be easier to navigate in and out and a higher turnover. I think the challenge with that is, typically the diagonal, you just sort of lose efficiency. So there's going to be a bigger footprint overall for RVs when we rotate them. Maybe there are better views, probably just going to require more square footage, sort of like diagonal parking. You just lose efficiency by switching to that. But if it's something that as a group, you're interested in kind of seeing what that would look like, as we kind of work through these ideas about layout and use, we can then look in more detail. What does a diagonal configuration yield?
Personally, I'm open. I mean, I thought it was a win from being able to stack inside of the roadways, and also a win for views for certain certain rows of campers. But if there's no real appetite for it, then I'm let it go.
I guess on this idea, maybe it's premature, because I know that Bill has also put forward a proposal that we'll want to get to. But this green space in the middle,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting, but I have no idea what we're giving up for it or what we're getting for it. Is it going to be one of those things where it's never used, or it's used for bad behavior? What are we giving up? What are we getting? Because I think it's nice, but I certainly, I just don't know. Does it become more of a hindrance, something else for the town to manage?
Sure. I mean, I think those are good questions. Let's take just the basic piece of the idea, which is it desirable to have an east-west connection through the park? During the season, we talked about other people using the park beyond the people that are camping there or in the RV sites. And if that's not desirable, or it's not that valuable, and we keep sort of a core that, the public in general goes around the outside, there's no passage through, then yeah, I mean, the modules can get bigger. We can take out that green space. We wanted to present it as a concept because it has been talked about, sort of the different rooms and creating spaces, and probably not, each RV doesn't really warrant an RV sort of cubicle or outdoor room made of vegetation. I think it's too much planting. It's overextending to the idea of revegetating parts of the site, but we think it could provide some vegetation. It could provide some visual buffering, and certainly some shade by having that through the middle. But if that's not in your interest, or it's sort of like, we'd rather have the RVs, then we can move away from that concept, but we wanted to get it on the table.
Yeah, it looks nice, and I think some greenery in there, but I'm not sure locals will use it as a path, because right now they feel like they're imposing. All the conversations say they don't feel welcome, or they're imposing on the campers. I just can't see a resident that won't walk around the outside, but will walk through there. I like the idea of breaking up the line with some vegetation, but I can't see a local resident wanting to cut through. It'd be similar to trespassing when you were a kid. You'd be cutting through your neighbor's yard. And that's not looked upon well anymore. So.
Anymore. Yeah, I mean, I think if the idea is some greenery, we can just make, sort of not a pathway system, but layer in some trees that accomplish similar things. The band just won't be as wide.
Could there be like picnic tables there? Like, could it be a space that could be used as a?
That's what's
Yeah,
there
they're
now.
on, okay.
Well, that actually brings up something else that I don't think is really teed up to talk about now. But I mean, the two fort features are both ripe for a certain amount of clearing, and I don't know what we need to actually do to the surface. I noticed that now one portion is covered with wood chips, but they'd be great picnic sites, especially if you had a couple of shade trees nearby as well. Most of the scrub brush that's there now doesn't provide any shade. It impedes the view, and it doesn't allow people to use the open space that could be there. I think that actually might be one of the, if, once we got our head around what the footprint of the RV park might be,
Yeah.
you could decouple and accelerate those things.
That would be great. Do we even need to, I keep thinking, are there things we can just agree upon? We can just move to the side? Like, I think, I'll just say them because maybe I'm wrong. So if I'm wrong, just say you're wrong. We'll table it for another conversation. Consolidating tent camping, we're in lot 22. Mostly we're agreed on that. Okay. This area that Eric brought up, which I think you're talking about now, John, which is above Fort Tussard, and that kind of making that all much more accessible, usable. I was walking up there yesterday. I haven't been up there in a million years. It's amazing. I mean, that to me is just such like the first thing they should do.
Clear it out.
Yeah, clear it out and make it. I think Eric will look to him for expertise on how can that be most accessible part of this trail structure? Is it, are there other things up there? I don't know. But that something is something I don't think that's contingent at all on the RV sites.
Well, the only thing I would say about that is, right, Series A had the road going where there used to be a road, and it would probably change, how you would think about this area, but not this area, right? I mean, so for me, that was really, I think you kind of need to make that call to decouple them completely.
But
I would agree with those. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Just those two stand out as, in fact, it looks like Parks and Recreation has already started clearing some of the stuff, invasives, away from Battery Whiting down by the beach. Maybe not so much, I looked at Tussard, but those two can be cleared. You're right, John, but I think that edge, is not necessarily part of clearing the top of Tussard.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I was just wondering on the path, because at one time you were going to use between the bathroom and the fort as an existing road you mentioned. But if that were a path put in and run up to the top of the hill and connected to the existing path, you could leave a boundary, a setback. Because if you go up there right now, even if it's cleared, let's say you clear all the scrub brush, and it's pretty wide by the tree band where the campers used to be. But if you go up there and think summer, you have no view to the north, because all you're going to look at is campers. You're not high enough to look over the campers. So as far as moving campers a little bit north, I'm not against it. I'm probably more for it because there is no view in the summer. It's a great view now.
What are
But
you talking about? You're talking about above the current fort?
no, see where the trees are?
Yeah.
Right behind it is where the tent sites. So on one of these drawings, he's pretty close with the campers there. If you were to go and put the path up behind the bathroom, right up across the crest of the fort, tie it into either side of the path, whether it's on the pavilion side or whether it's on the north side, tie that into the path. So it's a big loop.
Mhm.
There is, even if you want to set a 50 to 100-foot boundary, you could still move some campers up there. And because some of these spaces that are on here, if you're going to maintain the same number, are harder to do, where that set is there.
So, yeah, Richard's talking about recreating the road.
Well, make that a path
Between the fort,
all the way up to the crest of the fort and tie it into the existing path, either break left or go straight into the woods right there. And if you go on Google Earth and you run that line where that path would go east-west, there is, if you went 80 feet, 100 feet in some areas and 60 feet on others, the campers that are there could actually, as in one of the drawings, you did have it close. You wouldn't be as close, but you could still extend the camps to the RVs to the south.
Alyssa, can you draw that? Yep.
These campsites are, you still got adequate distance between here and there.
Yes, if you go on Google Earth, wherever the bathroom is, somewhere.
Right there.
Right here, the path would run behind the bathroom because there's the walk is, and I think there's stairs right there. So you go on the crest, you go on Google Earth and you separate this, where he had the new road, I think the new road was somewhere here. I can't remember on the drawing, he put a new road in.
Yeah,
It's right there. It came
But-
off of here.
Yes.
right.
Actually, plenty of room for
Camp,
You can come
campers.
from this side. So, I'm not saying that's the way to go, but if you go up there, even now, and just visualize what it would be like in the summer, a picnic table, you'd have to break it up with trees, but if you put a picnic table there, this time of year, it's great, but in the summertime, all you're gonna look at is rows of campers.
Correct.
So you wouldn't really have a visual. Yes,
But I think if I'm interpreting what you're saying it wouldn't hurt to add campers south of the existing
but
block.
with a setback from the path.
Right, right. So you've established your east-west connection. You've got a row of trees there. Yeah. So Alyssa, maybe they would be closer to where they are today. You know, there might be a greater offset.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure the exact layout, but it's
Right.
similar to one of your drawings.
Is it that plus, Richard, is it?
Yeah, so where that says 14 spaces, right, maybe that would be another row of campers, because I guess what I'm hearing is there's no view to the north anyway.
There's no
So,
view in the summertime. 2.2.
Okay.
While we're talking about that path, there is, if you come up
Just
on
take
the,
that myself.
on the southern side, up from the road, past the
You
volleyball
have
court,
100 to
you can,
whatever feet away from.
we could put wooden stairs right up to that top. Right now, it looks like a lot of letters have kind of worn away the land. It's right.
Yeah. I just walked on that yesterday. It's, yeah, that'd be.
Yeah, the washout.
Right up to it.
Maybe make the path less treacherous. We need stairs.
Okay.
Here on this, drawing, this is the road pretty much what's there?
I was just gonna ask Alyssa, can you draw the proposed roads just so, wait, and then there's, yeah,
Yeah.
and then if we drop that western road, just show how that elbow, it's slightly different, right? It would be like that scenario.
I did wonder, this road, that existed, what was the rationale for putting that road in?
There,
Because you don't need it in order to put the shrubbery there. That's the other big difference between 1.1 and 1.2.
sorry, why don't you go ahead and point to on the drawing? Yeah, so the circulation pattern, one, it just creates more space on that northern point of the park for park use. You know, the eastern side is kind of engaged with CISF, and so the street now kind of bifurcates that space and cuts it into smaller shapes. So some sort of road that isn't just rectilinear, but kind of allows for vehicles to circulate, and we'll talk about that more. Right, allows for flow, but doesn't come straight down over the hill. There's also a foundation of a building that's there that we thought might be able to be repurposed as a shade structure. So again, with the road being so close to it, thank you, Alyssa. Yeah, right. So with the road being so close to it, it's sort of left with fragmented green spaces for the public, and so if the road were to move or be adjusted, you end up with a much larger piece of sort of north-facing park by making that adjustment. And in that scenario, the upper restroom would be removed as well.
And Eric, you've drawn 4 different or layouts. You want to explain? the
Sure.
rationale?
Yeah, we can go through those. So just to kind of, I wanted to close the conversation on the east-west path through the center. Sounds like not much interest, like conceptually okay, shade, yes, pathway, common space, no. Sounds like consensus. Okay. So that will help us with the discussion of kind of modulating the shapes. So then you'll notice these two east-west, I'm sorry, north-south running strips of green between the different RV sites. The ones on the west is just kind of a visual separation. It can be some shade trees. The one to the east on those next two blocks, we need to create actually a grade change to accommodate that. And so interestingly enough, historically, when there were barracks and other buildings here, this is the orientation of the building. So a lot of buildings were oriented like this, so they had sort of terracing, or they had taller foundations on the east side. But we would have to have a grade transition between the first row and the second row. And Alyssa put this up. Do you want to talk through it real quick?
What's the average cut in or the height of that wall?
Yeah, I mean, we'd rather not do it as a wall, so we'd like to do it with, a 3-to-1 slope or 2-to-1 slope. We could use some boulders in different areas. It's 4 to 6 feet, depending. So it's a decent earth moving project to make that terracing happen. What I would say is if we're interested in when we talk about battery Tussard, we probably could use fill material over there if the idea is to encapsulate the top of the battery and sort of even it out. It's quite rolling. That material could be used on site, I think, to level and grade and sort of reconfigure some of the areas and make stuff that's pretty hummocky now and irregular, make the terrain more uniform up at the top, going through the process of cutting in to get those RVs to fit in that row.
So with that terracing, and it's going to be, you said it's 4 to 6 feet, so you're probably looking at 10 anyway, probably width of the terrace. Does it reduce the length of the camper sites in that area?
No,
Okay.
it's deep enough. I think it's 135 feet across. So you have 260-foot, and then you kind of have the slope of transition, sound right, in the middle,
Okay.
where you kind of grade up between the two. The reason that's required, as you can see, for the lower road, for an RV to back in and really use that space, it's not used today. I think Ray can attest to this because the topography today, you can't back in off of that easternmost road because the grade rises too quickly. So we have to essentially cut it into the hillside. Well, by doing that, it lets us consolidate the footprint of the RVs, instead of them being sort of stretched out to the west. We're sort of looking at opportunities on the east and saying if we bench these in, then they can be a little bit more tightly grouped around the center of the park by creating this. And to your point, a couple of the other options look at, is there a way to do this on the other side by benching to the east as well and creating the same kind of terracing effect, which is possible there, we believe.
Any idea on what it would cost? You don't do any estimating?
As a company, yeah, we sure, we could look at that. We're not something at the schematic level, we're not
Yeah.
usually, but if that's something you want to explore.
Like, is it a 500,000, a million?
No.
That kind of
Oh, no.
question.
Oh, no. No, I mean, I think we've done a tremendous amount of work with DPW here and they have great capabilities. So it's the type of thing, if we're moving soil on site from a on-site cut to an on-site fill, to me, that's a pretty doable approach, not involving an outside contractor. I think there's a likelihood you might encounter foundations and things like that. So, it's not all going to be easy digging, but this is an investment, for the future. So it's sort of, could it be phased? Could it be done in different paces? Absolutely. If you want to look at sort of a market rate, we could do an estimate that way. It might be easier to talk internally first and see what people think the order of magnitude and the type of equipment would be. It would be rental equipment, I think, beyond what we have.
And it looks like
presently.
with your drawings that were above CRMC setbacks for that.
Right.
easternmost-
So yeah. So if you look at that line, that's another potential advantage is this disturbance is more of like a water quality permit, not CRMC. As you go further down the slope, you might bump up against CRMC as you get there.
So I want to do a time check with people. Do people have until 4? 3:34, 4? You have till 4? John?
Okay.
Yeah. We don't need to take it. I'm not saying we should take it if we have to, but I just want to know how fresh it is. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. I feel like we're getting to some of the nuts and bolts that are going to allow us to move to this next series, and it's going to look sort of more tied together than we're talking about now. So conceptually, anyway, this one is the cross section. If we go to the next one, Brody, you can just kind of look at that. So this one, we looked at expanding these RVs off to the east, even even more. And so you can see that row now has been introduced.
It's just trading RVs on the north face to the east side.
So now we're kind of putting them in here, right? You see this bay coming in and then flipped off this whole corner. But what this does is create a double loaded. And I think conceptually, so Bill and I had some communications on just ideas about how can we do this? How can we consolidate this down? I think your emphasis was the big picture green space around and how can we get more intact green space? And so a way to do that, you can see the constriction here is a little bit of a pinch point as these guys pinch into this corner. Now we start to open up. It's just a more gracious, more accommodating, more continuity in that green space around the edge. We're not necessarily showing any trails yet or landscaping, but just the idea of there's more width in some of these options than there are in others to be able to make that connectivity. So in order to do this, similar thing, what if we go to the next slide? We just have to build it. We have to build another terrace downslope, right, to be able to do that. So again, you do the same process of cutting and benching that in. And we're not advocating for retaining walls. We think it can be done with grading so that it can be mowed, or where it's very steep, some rock work maybe and shrub plantings to retain the grades.
So I feel like on that one, we've heard so much about all the activity to the east, and that it's really intensifying that. And that's my concern with moving it down there. But that area now is pretty much for overflow parking. But you know, now there's CISF there, there's the trailers. I don't know. It makes me a little, yeah, John.
It sounds though, as if we give up the width of the walkway, you can actually get to the same overall road, or at least almost to the same overall road structure by filling in the walkway. Right? I mean, you leave two campers adrift.
So you still
Sounds correct.
open up more of this area on the
Yeah.
right.
And given that that's already a new road on the southernmost part of this array, you could even shade it over to the south.
We could even fit 75 in the other.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess we can see that. And it just seems still so constrained if we do that without, I don't know.
What's that?
So the change from the bottom, the change about the northern area where you've gotten rid of those two triangles of trees. I guess I just wonder, what are we really getting? Yeah, I can.
Which number are you at?
I'm looking at this. So what John, I think, is saying is we don't have to have this. We can just fill these in and still live with this. We've given up this.
That's what I am saying. I think I'm a little optimistic, but yes.
And I just wonder, what do we really get here? I mean, we're opening this up. We're opening this up.
Well,
Seems like we
Space,
should cut
open
this.
space.
So once
Open
upon a time, you could do that too. But once upon a time, we talked about having a big open space. It's a natural slope to the north. And if you provided a flat area, not necessarily paved or anything else, but an area where somebody could set up a grandstand, then you could have a natural amphitheater based on the slope of the land without ever having to pour concrete.
And there's already a flat concrete slab up there that could be a terrace and have one below it. So that would be fairly easy.
Candidly, personally, I'd blow up along.
It is small, but
We have that here too. This idea when I hear.
Okay, that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
That as a natural.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, you're right. And people have talked about a grandstand behind the pavilion.
Yeah. I guess I want to find the things that are challenging for me is there's so much green space there. And I just don't want to, I don't want to give up so much of the RV space for lots of reasons, but so anyways, that's my
But
So,
it,
so that's a 63 model, right? So that's 12 spaces.
In this, if.
All of
you're-
these
we
are
could do it
63.
with, I would be open to John, if we could do it in what you're saying, with the getting rid of the green walkway in between. But,
And if we, if this road were more to the south, which meant that you could take this whole bank
yeah,
in here, fill that up,
yeah,
and then some more down here, it's
Yeah.
probably be somewhere north of 63
Yeah.
at that point.
I guess.
South of 70.
Yeah,
Or you could leave the road and just park north and south if you want to put
What's that?
campers up to the tree. I'm trying to see what number is the top picture?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see. You're saying 2.3 or 2.1, just have them back up into the south. I got it.
Yeah, they're back up.
Yeah.
So you could add 10,
along the
roughly
road.
8 to 10,
Yeah, that's fair.
and they'd just be parked,
Richard, just to make sure you're talking about in this area.
Mhm.
yes, probably from the eastern, not the main drag, but the first east road from there up to the one you're leaving. So it would be yeah, you could back them straight in there. You wouldn't have to move the road. You just back, similar to what they're doing now.
That's fair. Point is, that's a new road anyway.
yeah.
So we could just design it how we want to.
So, right, so it is an adjustment to the road that's there, it just kind of takes advantage of reorganize, because it sort of zigzags over, and so it's more efficient to do it like this, and you can still look at what you're saying, you know, and I think there is space there. Because it's not gonna be occupied by tents, right? We don't have tents and RVs there.
Correct.
In your concept, it just would be RVs around that outer edge, and then public space beyond that. So that sounds like there might be space to be able to do that.
So does everybody think that that is a better use of space? Because I did love the idea when Jim first talked about it, when he raised it last time, of really thinking about that space where Eric just drew to the south of that road on the 23. That was all now going to be sort of more open, and then with the Fort Tussard work that you're going to do on the top, proposal you're going to give us on the top, that all becomes more of an area. So, but the trade-off is that those, in number 24, those two triangles of green in that. Are we getting more in 23 with the change you just made, Eric, than we are in 24? Or not 24, 22? Yeah,
So,
John.
so part of the reason that I thought if you shifted that southern, the road that runs east-west to the south by another 30 feet, you basically pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so there are 12 that are, I'm sorry, there are 10 in the bottom row of 2.3. And between the 4 that we just add by moving that road to the south, and then at least 6 or 8 that you can fit in that pathway, you get your numbers back.
Mhm.
You crowd that open space that used to be tent camping,
Yeah,
and then I think so
okay.
that was it.
I guess the final thought I have on this, because I don't feel super strongly, but is this idea of having Fort Getty, our town park, have a defined kind of campground space. And is it bleeding a little bit more than, say, to me, 22 is so beautiful because it was all very defined and
I think, let me make sure, because I think what Bill's saying is, what I'm saying is a little bit different, in that this road
yeah,
would come over this way
okay,
slightly.
yeah,
So the containment, I
okay.
guess, goal exists, so we're picking up, conceptually.
Oh, I see. I was
Here,
looking
I
at,
think
okay,
here,
I
that's
was
what
misreading.
We're picking up here, and then we're picking up here.
Okay, that's very helpful. I was misreading the drawing on
So I
23.
think the idea of, and this goes back to sketch concepts, the green space around
Yeah.
organized core of RV and kind of keeping this intact as the concept for
Okay.
public.
I think it's actually more compact
Yeah.
than the others.
Yeah.
And then I would say these can be subject to review. We'll talk a little bit about why this room makes sense in some ways rather than just coming down at 90. But I guess if we can work out this end and say this looks like the direction.
Sorry, now I'm confused because I thought that the evolution was from this
Yeah.
to the southern end, looking like what we just done here. I mean, so basically, all of this bit looks the same, right? But what we have is a rectangle. Nothing here, because that both is another big terracing job and cannibalizes parking.
Right, it takes away from parking, yeah.
And then we have a fairly compact campground right there with loads of open space on the west end. And then we've got the ability to do some, already got some, open this up and go. You can still talk about that diagonal road, but I don't think it adds much in the way of. It's nice for getting your boat trailer out.
That's where it starts to become kind of driver.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, as a model, look at the yield on this and it's
So,
not.
Those
Yeah.
are-
yeah, so the footprint of that seems more contained, you know. Yeah.
Well, this may be a good segue point to looking at my design. I'm not sure, but as I can see, I'm definitely the odd man out here. I have you've demonstrated that we can terrace, which is exactly what my design is called for. Not to throw a monkey wrench into things, but we've just gotten the 2004 or 2006 design, which does very similar things to what I've been suggesting, which is really to give the public back the hill or a good half of the hill and move the RVs to the east. I've drawn this with being cognizant of the fact that we've got 4 constituencies that we're dealing with. And one that is new to what they were looking at in 2005 is CISF. And I agree that we need to be concerned about traffic flow. But CISF is going to be bringing 75 campers in every day. And so segregating the RVs from that lower roadway, I think makes good sense. The issues I have with 63 is simply that we've just stated a principle that says revenue is going to serve our campground, our park, not drive it. And we have 63. We do not need 63 to be revenue neutral. So 50 keeps us revenue neutral, which is what many survey respondents were looking for. And it allows us to shape an RV campground that is surrounded by trees, is partly up on the top. But when you drive in here with all of these, you're facing a wall of RVs. You're not looking north-south, which so on my plan, I listened to you, Eric. You had some good suggestions that those 3 RV sites furthest to the south got eliminated. They can really be put up to the north along that east-west road. And so one of your initial ideas was to run a road from a parking area near the bathroom up and around, and we put up an upper parking up there above the RVs. It allows people to drive up there. Now, I'm sure we all use Beaver Tail, and when you go out to Beaver Tail, I mean, now they had to shut the road down that went around. So yes, people used to drive around, and that was all well and good. But now there's a parking lot. People come and they enjoy the sunset. I think that's exactly what would happen here. People can either come and use the park, walk around, and not be hampered by the RVs, and have, you know, a full real park with open space for their use.
I just want to mention that
Yeah.
my arguing for 75
Yeah.
and willingness to go to 63 is because I think it's not about revenue. I've never been obviously driven by revenue, unfortunately, in my life. And it's really about the experience and the history that we have at Fort Getty as a town. And it's gone from 105 to 75. And now I just am not comfortable with the idea of saying that we should go to 50. And it's not driven by,
constituency that we're
I'm the town of Jamestown. And there is
a lot of voices.
there are a lot of voices, and you're speaking of some, and I'm speaking of others. And I think that there is a value of having, you know, a yacht club and a sailing center and boat yards and a campground and a golf course. And I think that we should maintain some level of campers at the campground and not try to slowly diminish and get away with them. I do think there's a value also to the revenue side of it. And by having a larger number, we can have that, but that's not my driving force for arguing for more.
Well, I would,
I just
you know,
wanted
so,
to say
okay,
that.
and, but I would clearly, no matter how many we end up with, and I'm in a minority here, but if we were 63, we're talking about $504,000. I would argue that the town
about the number
has
of
to
dollars.
maximize. I know, exactly. I would say we have to have market value and maximize revenue for what we have there, because that is only fair to Jamestowners. We're doing it for James.
You're talking about revenue neutral and you're 50.
Yeah,
I don't think it
correct.
should be revenue neutral. I think we can charge more. 75 would clearly bring more, but again,
Yeah.
that's not my driving reason for it, but I'd be happy to keep it at 75.
Right. Okay. Well, that, you know, I think that goes back to the principle of using it to serve us and not drive us. Yes, John.
I think the survey responses were pretty clear that there are about as many people that would like to see camping expanded as there would like to see it disappear. So I think the fact that we stay somewhere, you know, we move somewhere not so far from where we are is sensible. I do believe that you can achieve revenue neutrality at 50. Doesn't mean we need to go there, right? Nobody said revenue neutrality was the highest and best use. My biggest challenge about this plan, Bill, which I've said before, is I worry about the quantum of parking we have left. I don't think we've ever really talked about trailer parking, and it's a problem. I certainly don't want it there personally. I mean, I've never heard from anybody else, but I like that open field now.
Sure.
But my biggest nervousness about this plan is that we get very close to the CRMC line. We have to do a healthy amount of terracing, and we cannibalize most of the parking. That's, and so my question really is how to get around this, almost more than, you know, is the number of campgrounds.
Well, the yellow there is meant to be overflow parking. So we can enhance the parking around the bathroom that we're talking about. We can probably fit 30 or 40 parking spaces up in that upper parking. That there's parking just as in 2.4. There's all that overflow parking. The CISF road was drawn in specifically as a request on the basis of a request from CISF that the lower road is busy. It is, there are a lot of trailers that are being, pulled in and out while people are driving in. So the request was to get CISF deliveries off the main road as quickly as possible. That's certainly not a requirement. We can, I think, Eric, you were in favor of just taking a left at that east-west road, going up, doing your drop off, coming, swinging back down, using the existing roads. So if you use the existing roads, you're not impacting any of that overflow parking. But yes, we have a lot of work here. Whether we go with what Beta is suggesting, there's no discussion of boat trailer parking.
I know.
We haven't gotten
There's
there yet
no
because we're
treatment.
kind of stalled on this. So
We don't have the walking trails. There's a lot that we have to do. Plus, I don't want to feel that we were being hornswoggled, but where was this? This should have been the basis. Eric, you should have come here on day one with this plan and with Ed Mello's plan and said, here are prior plans for Fort Getty.
Ed Mello's plan was not a plan. It was a drawing by a town administrator. It
Okay.
was not a plan.
All right.
It was
And that's why,
idea.
and that's why the ad hoc committee got formed. But this was a plan that I've never seen. I don't know about any of you, but this has a lot of ideas in it. It has use for parking down in lot 22. It has a road going up the southern side of the battery. I'm not necessarily in favor of any of that. It lowers, it provides 84 sites. Anyway, I wish we could have,
I believe that was distributed at the beginning when the committee was formed as part of the packages from the 2004 or previous master.
I don't,
plans.
I never.
Not Eric's fault.
No, it's not Eric's fault. No.
Well, I'm just saying, whatever that content is, whatever the material is, we came into this process with you concurrently. Right. So
But
if you wanted to bring pieces from prior work and maybe now you're introducing it, that would be something as a group, we'd be going through that process.
I know, I just figured that you probably had it, but maybe you didn't have it. I did not have it.
We knew of it. I didn't ask for
Yeah.
it. You asked for it this
Yeah,
week. There must
I
be
did.
something that prompted you to ask for it.
I went through Mary Maher's,
Yeah.
all her
Maybe we
comments.
can ask Mary
Yeah.
why there are pieces of it that why it wasn't adopted. I think that would be a
Right.
reasonable thing to
Well,
ask the
it
town
wasn't
council.
adopted because it was too far away. That's what they said in one of the meetings in the past few years, that they talked about it again. Ed did at one of the meetings if they redesigned it. But the parking where it is now, if in lot 22, was just too far for people to walk. You need a shuttle bus.
I think it's a
But that was
point of
one reason.
information.
Right.
It's interesting, but
Yeah.
we've come very far and I don't think that needs to bring us back. What they said in 94 and for reasons that I don't know why some pieces didn't get adopted, but now we are here. We are doing our work. If you're informed by this in your own proposals, great. If other people think there are good pieces of it, say it, let's get it out there, but we need to move forward.
Right. Well, so I just draw your attention to the fact that this does what I'm asking for, which is opening up the western half for parkland. I think that's a good compromise between RV having this RV, the RV campground that I'm showing doesn't have necessarily the beautification that Eric was providing with a path through it. But we can definitely do the trees as suggested in between the rows of RVs. And they will be in a much more beautiful spot than they currently are. It is enhancing our RV campground and making it worth a higher market value.
So there's one big piece of information that I'm having a hard time, like, as I look at these, and it's right, how much green space are we adding with each of these designs? And how much of the land use is occupied by the campgrounds with these designs? I feel like if we can kind of think around that, like the space allocation, that can help us. 'Cause we know right now that tent and RV camping occupies 43% of the land that has active program uses. And so,
For 3 months of the year.
right, yeah. But, so the comprehensive plan we received, and it says the comprehensive plan aims to rebalance Fort Getty by addressing the loss of informal shoreline access and the intensity of camper use by prioritizing equitable public access and environmental sustainability. So, I mean,
I do think the proposals that have come forward, though, do that. Maybe not to the extent that you're looking for, Bill, but there is opening up. There's a whole row of RVs that are now gone. And then in 23, which I think we're kind of riffing off of, there's all of that land to the south. So there's a lot being provided here that you're looking for. It's not everything, but it's a lot.
well, I think if we had the numbers, that would help us to kind of
Yeah.
conceptualize it and see it, understand it.
Well, hopefully our plan won't be like this one. Everybody does
For that, maybe it's like that because
but who's to say the town's going to accept anything we put in? We could be this in 2045.
It's very sad.
So just have come to this moment, like where do we go from here? Because we do have all of these other things we need to talk about, like trailer parking and how much of that is.
Right, right. Just to touch on some of these ideas, the yellow parking, conceptually, and Bill and I, we've had some email on this, the trailer parking to the north, I'm not sure that's the highest and best use for the trailers in that space, especially if we're going to try to activate it. And I think we had some agreement on that.
Sure.
The yellow space is sort of where the CISRF road, those shaded areas, there's a lot of grading challenges and kind of layout challenges. So we're into triangular shapes and geometries that aren't conducive to parking cars. Just cars are modular. And so there's sort of a loss of parking efficiency, and I don't know what that yield looks like. I haven't studied this in detail. Alyssa hasn't put it into CAD. We just kind of said conceptually there's a lot of good things here. There's some things that maybe are challenging. So I think there's sort of a parking challenge in the CISF road that you label. Again, I think maybe there's just a simpler way to use the existing road network, and not cut that slope up, with another roadway.
I would just challenge you to look at that. And is there any way, how do we treat CISF traffic and how do we get it off the road as quickly as possible if we can? And then what do we do with trailers? I
Right.
totally agree. I don't want to take that whole space. But they're going to come off of the boat ramp, and right now they're just leaving them along the sides of roads.
Right. Yeah, we need to guide that better. Right.
So we need some work on that.
And so one of the concepts that had this diagonal road starts to suggest a pattern of when they leave the ramp and how they might move up through and circulate the site instead of having to travel sort of the whole perimeter, introducing a loop that allows to maybe even stage parking a little bit further away. So we'll wind up looking at that in more detail. But that's one of the concepts behind that diagonal road kind of coming in there.
Do you have an idea about trailer parking that you can share with us now or not? Or should we put that?
Let's talk about circulation. I mean,
Okay.
can we do that on, we can use Cody, if you can go back a couple. Any one of these. So one idea we talked about was having a proper turnaround at the boat ramp itself. I think we had sketched that on a previous concept. Right now, it's a little too small geometrically. And also you can see sort of the curve of the road pinches in there pretty substantially. We'll come and look at this in a minute. So what that would do is allow vehicles that are coming up to the boat ramp. Hopefully there's enough room. We can accommodate vehicles that are using the boat ramp. And with the idea of sort of an organizing element to allow vehicles to turn around and then come back and exit south on Fort Getty Road. At which point, if they were dropping off for CISF, they could drop off between the workshop and the main building. I also think a reasonable pattern for CISF would be to allow the street that heads to the west, the unnamed street, It heads up the hill. I think that could be a one-way street, certainly for the hours of operation. I think during the year that becomes less important, but when CISF is really active, that section could become one way. It could also become CISF only, simply no other vehicles, much like the way schools are managed and so on, sometimes with certain periods of time and a couple of signs. But that left turn up would allow passengers to discharge off the passenger side of the vehicle directly to the building, and then they would loop up and around and head out to the south.
Yes, from the Y there by the lower bathroom. Everything to the north flows anti-clockwise. So up the easterly road and then turning west on whichever was, wherever it is.
We think that Fort Getty Road could stay two ways. I'll draw on this one.
All the way to the, here.
Just gonna draw this one to make it easier. What I'm saying is that the CISF drop off pattern could be like this. Yes. Yeah. And maybe this road ends up being sort of one way, but allows this in this scenario, maybe that road is closed to other users. After hours and things like that, then.
I mean, given that some of the issue is the circular.
Sorry, John, if you can just use the mic.
Sorry. Given that one of the issues is the high degree of traffic around the boat ramp and around the road to the east of CISF, is there any reason not to make that one way with an exit turning to the west and going out? No, not there. Keep going all the way out to the boat ramp.
No, one way.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that could be an option. It's going to bring, this traffic all the way down and around. I think the movement we have to accommodate is we have to allow people to get back that way. So if you were to pull your boat out, and this is a one-way loop, which we have in a lot of other parks work this way. This one-way loop would require the boat trailers to come around, and then they're going to need to come back to the north. If today's time of rent use, they're going to back in and store their boats here. If it's RV, a camper, they'd be using these spaces here.
Got it.
So if you were to make that one way, the RVs would have to follow the same path to get to their sites? It's because you're saying it's going to be one way all the way around that whole loop?
That's a concept. I think we see this can continue to function as two-way. I think in that scenario, I think we should have a proper turnaround at this end that allows vehicles to travel back south with adequate space away from the ramp itself.
If you make the northern end of that loop one way, that means all of the campers are going to go by the CISF. They'll have to go on the main road, so we're just actually increasing traffic on that main road. Instead of trying to reduce it, we're increasing it.
It's a fair point.
So if this remains two-way and this remains two-way with just a small segment, or maybe some of these remain or become one-way just to organize the drop-off activity. Should put Cody on another slide and move forward.
Now, we're spending a lot of time on one-way or two-way. Is it better if we just move forward with the site development and then figure out if it needs to be one-way? Because it seems like the CISF is driving the park forward and not us. We're concentrating so much around CISF instead of putting the park together and then coming up with changing the road one way or the other.
The only reason I was pushing this issue is the traffic. There's been a lot of talk about the conflict of cars, trailers, and kids over here at the boat ramp.
Oh, I understand that.
And I don't think a roundabout solves that either. I'm genuinely flummoxed on how we're going to.
Yeah, I am too. I'm just making the other one way just adds more traffic. I don't know how we fix it, but I think Ray will attest that there's quite a bit of traffic and can be speedy traffic on that road. I'm not sure how you fix it yet. So
This
it'd
would be
nice
a
to get the
great
sites-
area for Beta to, I mean, if you guys can look at traffic flow and come back with some recommendations.
That's what they're doing.
That would be really
That's
helpful.
what he's doing.
Okay, that one, I'm sorry, I did not see that one.
Oh,
but-
so no, it's a new slide. We just popped it up. I mean, I think what we're just trying to represent at a sketch level. So I think I talked about an area of refuge, which is where children and counselors would be able to enter and wait in the center of the circle. If you look at the image to the right, you can see it's a wide expanse of pavement and everyone's walking sort of diagonally across that. And we've got boats and trailers and people backing in, and some people that are unfamiliar with the area, other people that are more familiar. In the size, and I think there's a lot of this that needs to be refined, but the idea of an organizing element that allows, if you're dropping off for CISF, you go around the loop and you head back to the south. If you're parking, or if you're planning to launch a boat, you see how the road curves in dramatically on the right-hand image, the existing road, and you can see the erosion where trucks are parking on that edge. So it's a problem we have. I think we just take on that challenge. And what I'm trying to say is if we realign that edge and develop a better alignment to the ramp, and you can see how it's kind of sketched as a straight line. I think looking at ways to create and define the space better at that end to then give better guidance to the circulation pattern. And maybe that even means some striping, some paint just to provide that definition. And then this suggests a pattern for crossing. I'm not sure. There may be other patterns that should be considered. I think typically CISF is working to get to the northern side of the ramp and the beach area that's adjacent. So kind of crossing to the circle, area of refuge in the circle, crossing again, and then crossing the ramp. And trying to move away from a long diagonal trajectory, which normally we would try to do with any sort of road circulation, is we try to make that more 90 degrees more visible to the users. And then this, you can see we spent some time on this earlier today. This just indicates in the sketch the different areas regulated or used by CISF, A, A1, A2, and B, the flex used to the north. So concept level, and Cody, if you go back a slide, this is a diagram talking about kind of patterns and how flow might work. And then this, if we go back to the sketch, then that just shows kind of in a more detailed way how that element might sort of fit and organize things.
On the other slide, you had a circle down the other end. Is that another roundabout, or is that just the circulation?
Yeah, I think sort of exploring whether it would make sense depending on how you handle trailer parking. Okay. So if we don't want boats and trailers headed up through the campground along the western road, keep them on the eastern road. The trailers really need a way to sort of turn around and point north again. So some kind of element like that to allow that to happen, because if not, they're going to be using the pattern of the streets in the interior part of the park, which might be okay. It's kind of to some degree what happens today, but a better way to reorient and turn back around. So these aren't to scale. They're just kind of symbolic of a movement. I think there's a more detailed plan that has to look at, how that might fit in each of those locations.
In your thinking so far, we effectively have to harvest some of that vegetation, just as you say, is currently driven over anyway, in order to create a straighter shot roadway into the.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is part of a comprehensive discussion with CRMC, because we're going to be asking for certain things, and we're going to be giving certain things. Like we're going to be, for instance, we're taking out the entire western road and we're doing some other adjustments to remove impervious pavement. We may ask for this to make the alignment of the boat ramp work. It's pretty degraded now. The pavement's unraveled and vehicles are parking there. So the idea of kind of straightening out that alignment, I think, is what we're trying to get to, is provide better geometry so people that aren't particularly skilled, or even skilled people, may have challenges in certain weather conditions or whatever, to improve the geometry of the approach for the launch.
Eric, I can't really tell, but how far away is the proposed trailer parking? I can't really see where you.
At this point, we haven't really put pencil to paper. I think some of those opportunities exist in the road network, which road pattern, people think makes sense as far as circulation goes. So we
Just,
could,
one of the reasons why, and it comes back to Jim's proposal for the touch and go dock. If you make it too far, then you'll have the boat sitting on that touch and go dock for a longer period
too
of time,
long, right, where they're trying to run back to.
trying to run back, park the trailer and get back to the ramp for the next person. Jim might have some input on that, but we're limited with space, but I'm afraid that if we move it too far away, then the congestion at the ramp is even worse, even with a float.
Good point.
Yeah, I would think that should we be allowed to put a touch and go dock in, it would be a two-sided dock in which the working side, I would envision the dock itself to be just south of the ramp. And the working side would be the side that boats would be coming in and out of the water from. And then the north side of that would be where boats might be staged for CISF. So I would envision a dock that is the equivalent of 2 boats in length so that we could stage 4 boats on that touch and go dock at any one time.
What kind of time would you want the owner to have to go park his truck, then get back to the dock before you have?
Typically, there's a sign on the dock that might say 20 or 30 minutes. But if you've got if your boat is taking up 1/4 of the spots, I don't see that as a big problem. There's not, CISF is going to be putting many more boats in during the day than a private vessel, than the number of boats I would expect to come from outside the park to be using the ramp.
Okay,
And then CISF is going to be using it at very specific times, at the start of their day, at the end of their day. And then I believe the boats just sit on the beach during the day when not used.
so you have no problem with if the trailer parking was all the way to the south end? Just so we can start to lay it out. I don't know how far you want that away, so the time doesn't run for too long. Or if the boat's stuck on the ramp, why the owner?
I
'cause the
think,
dock's
I
full.
think we'll be fortunate to find space in the park for boat trailer parking regardless of where
Yes,
it is.
yeah.
You may just have to have a limit, right? Limited.
There'll be a limit that you can occupy the dock. And 20 or 30 minutes is plenty of time to go get your truck and back it up
It's
again.
actually very long for a touch and go dock at a. But
Especially with a limited time.
are you suggesting that touch and go dock would be a boat width off of the ramp so that the ramp could continue to be used even with
Yes.
boats on the
Yes.
touch and go dock?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
so,
Absolutely.
okay, so
Yeah.
the usable, the usable launching width will be unchanged.
Take a boat to the touch and go and put a boat in the water.
No,
at the same
I
time.
know, but I'm trying to get my head around whether the ramp width, the effective ramp width for launching a boat will be diminished or not.
I
With a
don't see
boat,
that.
with a boat on the
I
side.
don't see that.
Okay.
Eric, are you thinking of trailer parking now if you're driving to the ramp on the right? And I don't know what the capacity of all that area is, but is that, my understanding is that what you were thinking, but I don't know.
It potentially could be along Fort Getty Road, although I think further south of what we're looking at here.
Fort Getty Road on the east.
On the east side, right? I think that these spaces here are typically like out haul and other activity. I don't know whether sort of transient boaters would use these or should be allowed to use this first bay of, I think, 12 there to the east.
Question
I'd
for
look
Ray.
input on that though.
You have trailer parking assigned to that cement area right across from CISF? It's assigned
we have
as
it.
trailer parking?
The day parking, like, right here?
Just and then here.
Yeah, the one right across from CISF. The
Right here?
thing there says trailer parking.
Yes, so that is daily parking, but it's narrow parking. So it's to fit your trailer, you have to disconnect it from your
Right,
vehicle.
but how many spots are there for trailers?
Let me think. 10 or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but it's something like
Do you know how long a trailer it'll accept?
What was that?
Do you know how long a trailer it will accept?
Yeah, it's pretty much it'll fit a vehicle or a
Right.
trailer. I don't know how deep it is. No.
Usually
it's-
that's pretty empty and it's.
right. It's
hard-
really you can really just park vehicles there
Yeah.
or a trailer. I would say you could fit a truck. I don't know the length of a typical boat trailer, but I've seen trucks parked there, so how long is a typical
A
150?
boat trailer is typically slightly longer than a standard full-size pickup truck.
I've seen boat trailers, people will park there from the pier who have pier permits if there's bad weather and they fit their boat trailers in there. So I know that you can fit boat trailers in there. I don't know the length of their, Jim might know the length of those trailers more than I would.
Yeah. So Ray, the question is, if there's a storm coming and the aqua farmers need to pull their boats out of the water, is that a spot they use?
They do sometimes use that. They request to pull their boats out and use that there temporarily.
Yep.
And we accommodate them when we can.
Yep. But typically, someone who's coming in for the day is not going to be putting their boat in during a pending storm.
No, correct.
So, okay.
So
Has anyone determined how many spots are needed?
Yeah, thanks.
We were gonna ask you that question. I mean, there's, I think we'd have to identify the multiple different uses and what you think the number are of those. I think if we limited 25, I don't know, we look.
Well, I think, Ray, you have
So-
spaces available for the summer season for a trailer.
correct.
How many of those?
26, 24, I think we have 24, 26
And those are
seasonal spots.
Full, sold out for
Correct.
each season?
Correct. And we'll occasionally, if we have requests for additional seasonal sites, we'll use some of the transient parking that's adjacent to the last concrete slab. Usually two is the max we'll do each year if we need to extend, because the transient parking, the grass parking that's next to, so I can point on that. So all the parking over there is going to be, yeah, that space. Well, so that space, you can tell where all the boats are parked and where you can tell where the concrete is. That's where the seasonal spots are, and we park them in between in those grassy spots. And then from here down to like here, that's the transient boat parking, which I've never seen that fill. So we have a little bit of a buffer there. The majority of people who are out for the day, they're parking on the road right here, and they're parking on the side of the road right here. I would say typically maybe 3 over here, maybe 3 or 4 over here I'll see on a busy day. And then sometimes you get somebody park right there as well.
I have a feeling that the more capacity, the easier we make it and the more capacity we offer, it'll fill up, right? Because 7 on that road, it's the way you've just described is kind of full. And if you get there and it's like that, you don't feel good leaving your trailer somewhere else. And my guess is that most residents will drop their boat and then go pick up the person who's driving it back home from somewhere else, like Fort Getty, West Ferry or somewhere else on the island. Or just hang around until they're, anyway.
I think it does beg the question on whether or not you should set a maximum limit
Yeah.
for boat trailers, in which at that point, the entry shack needs to keep tabs of how many, which may result in you turning boats away because there is not additional parking if you haven't carved out enough space for that.
The challenge with that is people arrive at the park before our staff arrive. When they're out fishing, they're fishing as early as 4 a.m., 5 a.m. in the morning. And when you go and try to have them move their boats, they're in their boat gone.
Right.
So that's
You could take a tally of how many spaces are still available
Mhm.
to fill
right,
at opening time,
right.
and then control the number of trailers still coming in.
My concern would be I have a resident with a boat trailer coming into the park, and you're telling a resident that they cannot come in and park their boat, but I have someone who is a non-resident in there parking their boat. That could create conflict. I'm not saying we can't do it. I just see a conflict there. So, you know, and I think you're right also in the fact that when people get there and they're like, this is full, or John said, this is full, they find other plans. They're like, I can't fit. So I think signage, you know, making it so we block off areas where we don't want people parking, don't park here, park here. When that's full, people kind of can use their judgment. Well, there's really nowhere else for me to park. I better figure something out, rather than somebody at the gatehouse turning them away. And it would cut down on the traffic down there. I see you're gonna make somebody drive all the way down there just to see that it's full kind of thing. But I mean, this is all these logistic things.
The boat went out only to find out that no place for them.
Yeah, there's that as well, right? Sure.
But you need to have a sticker
For just
just to bring you to park
yes,
somewhere.
right. You buy a day. You have to buy a day pass for the boat. You could buy a day pass, $30 for the boat, and do that as well. And we could limit. We could do it that way as well. You can limit the non-resident sticker holders. We only sold, you know, we have this much space. Sorry, we're not selling any more day passes with a boat right now. We don't have the space for that. We could, you know, absolutely do that.
So we have 6 minutes left, and clearly we have a lot. Everything we talk about, we have more to talk about. But we know that in addition to the trying to come to some conclusion around RV configuration, we want to talk about traffic flow, trailer parking, making sure we have adequate parking for whatever we come up with. Beaches, we haven't really talked about. The above the fort area that we're all super excited about, to get some more definition about what we're proposing. Storage, we haven't really talked about that either. And then bathrooms, I think that might be an area we agree of maybe eliminating the upper bathroom, focusing on the lower, and having two, one near the new consolidated tent camping, and then maybe one down near the ramp. But otherwise.
I had another question too about lot 22. We talked about putting tent camping there, but is it also possible, because there's more land there, the tent camping I don't think will take up the whole space, but could there be trails through there or walking paths that could be added? I don't know. Yeah, like some way to allow people to access and use that space too.
Yeah, and trails. Yeah.
Yeah, I had 3 points on lot 22. One, what kind of maintenance shed are we actually thinking about? How big is that going to be? And is that the right place for it? I would, you know, the town definitely has other land, has Taylor Point, has various other places, obviously a little further away. But so I'd like to hear more about what that looks like. If it's low and consolidates with bathrooms down there, that makes some sense to me. I don't want a huge barn down there necessarily.
Right.
Plus, the size of the tent camping area just look, they were based on, you know, what's down there, but you know, I think they looked large.
Did you show? I don't think we've actually talked about that one here.
And then
Reduce the number from the original.
yeah.
That's 26 originally, and I think Eric
reducing it to 18 or
reduced
20,
it's
18
18. It was in the
with 36. Yes, right. I did see that.
But again, it's hard to see like a
don't know.
schematic, you know, a drawing and how much space it takes up. So it'd be helpful to have the values for like how much acreage it takes up and how much of the.
Yeah,
The minimum square foot that they recommend for campgrounds, I looked it up and I'm gonna, let's say 120, but that's not it.
Yeah, I don't think
It's a minimum square foot. You can do the math.
Right. Yeah.
To figure out what the campsite
Yeah.
should be and if
It
that
just
fit.
seemed, you know, 3,200 seemed a bit excessive, but also, you know, thinking about possible more parking down to the, you know, on the lower level there. That's pretty open right now. And, you know, there could be, you know, perhaps more parking sites there, either for trailers or, you know, for overflow parking.
Effectively given the tenter almost double the square foot space you've given out. Exactly.
Yeah, I think there's a reason though. I mean, I think that there's some differences that you're if you're an RV, you're there for the season for the most part. You're more self-contained. I do think, I mean, I'm not a camper, I wish Ed were here, but I think with tent camping, you do want a little bit of space. You don't want to be right up against each other. You're communing in nature.
Because there's only a piece of cloth between you and the person next to you, really.
Exactly.
I had a different a different observation about the various schematics. And I wondered whether or not, I know when I go to a campground, I actually really don't want to see asphalt and I don't want to see cars. And the current designs, they're very convenient for the campers at the back. But I wondered if we oriented the parking to be on the same axis as the road, and therefore the cars are visible from the road, but once you get the second row back, they're less visible. You could put some, you could screen it. But then also, I mean, I know it's a little far, but when we have events in the bigger park and the campground isn't full or the parking lot isn't full, we could use it.
Yeah.
Because it'd be a little bit more, I mean, it's not that much more proximate, but, and anyway, then the campers would be, perhaps more secluded. And in at least one version of this, we have a lot of roadways in there. I've never felt, I mean, I would have thought we don't need roads for those campers. It's not that I don't like those campers. I just think I have a different ethos about
No, I agree with you.
tent camping.
And one point about the roads, if we're putting in new roads, I'd like to know if we can make them pervious, non-tar, and what the cost differential there is, and whether that is possible.
Imagine busted clamshells. Holy cow.
Oyster.
So Eric, any thoughts about, I mean, we are in April, hitting May, and we're making progress, but we have some work to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the comments about this area, just to be clear, the brown linear network is a trail, not a road in these. So we weren't proposing to drive through. Those were sort of walking paths. Like currently there's not definition. So you have people strolling through other people's campsites. And so I think we're just trying to impart, like when we did this, we're trying to impart like this sort of organization. And I think we could look at the cars sort of out to the Fort Getty Road, similar to the pavilion, I think is how you're describing. The challenge too is like unloading and loading, and maybe they're back end spaces or something, but the amount of gear, trying to keep that off of the main access or at least buffered from the main access. So we'd have to maybe set that parking in a little bit, but all those things that you're asking about could be looked at. And I feel like we looked at the average tent space that they use today. Is that how we did this? And sort of said, okay, if we kind of give you the same footprint. So if you wanted to consolidate it down or shrink it, are you allowed two
Should be
tents
based
per
on
site?
something. I think we should do some homework on what is ideal, not one of ours opinion.
Just, is it 2 tents per?
Yes, it's 2 tents per site.
So, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty straightforward piece. I feel like there's decent consensus around this. I think, continuing on with the overall plan going into series 3, and taking the sketch that we've got at the top, 2.3, and sort of fleshing that out in a little bit more detail. I don't know if there's counter opinions at this point, but the concept is there, but using that for parking along that edge. And so then with this, we can start to flesh out where parking uses happen. So some of the benefits of either the road that's here today, trailers that leave today could park along some of these edges and move them up away from the boat. Right now, they're congregating around that corner and it's pretty congested. By extending the loop and providing, it's a line of sight. So when you come in, you kind of know where your vehicle's parked. You can see it. It's a line of sight if somebody's coming in on a boat and the truck's waiting up above, and providing more edge to be able to park overflow boat trailers and trucks might make sense with some of those patterns. So we can look at that in a little more detail. I did have a couple slides on the battery if we got another minute just to look at that real quick. Yeah, you can go back, Cody, a couple. So this is the fortification that exists today. There were 3 large cannons and then 2 smaller 6-inch guns sort of off to the western side. So when you walk out there, those arcing shapes that you see are the edges of those wells that housed the cannons, and the cannons were recessed like down below the grade, so you wouldn't see them until they were elevated to fire. So this is a plan view of what's at the top, which includes the blast apron, and the blast apron is visible. That's the concrete that you see. A lot of the stairways and other things have been filled in. The second image down is the floor plan of what's underground that assumably has been filled or blocked off. You can see the old road that went through there, and then there are a couple cross sections just in terms of what's happening through that space. Go to the next slide. These were the weapons that were on the western side, on the western flank. Now, this area is essentially vegetated, so you can't, it's there. If you walk in, you can find the remnants of these, but it's been filled. And there's fair amount of tree growth over this edge, but this is looking towards West Passage. Next slide. So part of these features on these western gun emplacements were these 2 little, we call them crow's nests. They were essentially with a battery commander, controlled undirected fire. So these are accessible. So when you talk about interpreting the fort, there's challenges and parts of the fort that probably aren't safe and would require a lot of investment and maybe that's part of the future vision. There are these elements that exist. There's a pair of them that you can walk into that are raised above grade, exposed, and you can see with vista pruning and things like that, you can open up views back to the water. Kind of an interesting element to be interpreted that already exist. You just have to cut through the vegetation to get to them. So there's a pair of those that are out there. Next slide. And then these are the surrounds on where the bigger guns are. So these curves that you see and you kind of walk on today, that's a walking path. You can see these are at Fort Wetherill. So the construction is that's quite a deep wall. It's probably 20 feet deep. And in the case of Fort Getty, it's just been filled up to the top. So those wells have been filled. If we wanted to plant trees or do other things, it seems to me that we'd be able to, if you leveled up the grade, you'd be able to fill those wells and plant trees and do some vegetation up here. Or if you wanted to expose it by bringing the grade down and revealing some of the features, that might be an option as well. It's just a view of the blast apron. So those things that look like concrete walkways that you're walking on, they slip off. Those were essentially aprons that extended out in front of the weapons. And so when you get to the southern edge of that, and now's a good time of year to go out and see it. It sounds like some of you were out there already. You can start to get a sense of what this view, and a lot of this material, some of this is sumac, some of this is native vegetation, but there's also invasive vegetation in here that could be managed. And I think the opportunity to open up views from this area to the south and to the west. And that's to the east, also a pretty spectacular view as well from the other side. And then the far west side, there's also this coincident rangefinder station. It's essentially for sighting and optics. It's got furniture in it. People are attracted to hang out in it. I think probably there's an assessment that should be done and just sort of whether it's advisable to allow that to happen or if there's some stabilization that should be done. And again, clearing views, interpreting it, it's all sort of right there. With a little stabilization, it could be an interesting interpretive element.
Is that like they have at Battery Park too, where it's underground?
Correct. It's the same type of setup. Yes. Yep. Exactly. And so what I want to talk about the irregular terrain, this is sort of facing north. So as Richard had talked about, this northern edge that interfaces with where the RVs are and the tent camping, sort of like they ran out of fill or they stopped. So you see these pieces of the backside of what was called the breastwork that held the fortifications for the guns and the cannons. And so essentially, we're looking at this and we're looking at this uneven terrain. If we brought this grade up, we could either go over these and encapsulate them, or we could reveal them somewhat more and then make this terrain more usable. It's quite irregular, so it's next to impossible to mow. So it's sort of a brush cutting exercise. But if we were to level it off, make it more uniform, then you could make better use of some of the space. Again, the blast apron. And I think this is recent work with the path work being improved up there and the connections being made. Just a couple more shots of the south. And I don't know, the drawings don't show how thick that apron is, but it's possible that maybe pieces of it could be removed for planting if you wanted to go in that direction. Probably a coordination with historic on doing something like this. Encapsulation usually is something that they don't they're not adverse to, because you haven't really changed the archaeology of what's there. It's intact. It's under the surface. It's just encapsulated. And then this again just kind of highlights some of the uneven terrain. So if we just go back a slide, Cody, and the only thought on this is about 3 acres, depending on how you measure it. Of some of it's used now for tents, but a lot of it is sort of underutilized. So conceptually, there's a lot of opportunity there just by sort of evening out the terrain, managing the vegetation. And again, part of that, what I mentioned at the beginning, the vegetation management plan. Trying to develop something that looks proactively at management areas and habitat creation and what can be done. And portions of this area are outside of CRMC jurisdiction and fall more central to the park itself. So some thoughts. I know you wanted to kind of hear more about where that might go. The ideas with terracing, when I talked about some of the cut and fill opportunities, cutting for the terracing, I think we could probably utilize this material on site to even out some of this terrain, and that would be the most efficient way to kind of do both projects at the same time. I think thoughts on that? That's the battery tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think his brain's full.
I know. I think I think this is something that everyone's excited about and how it actually evolves. We'll have to think about, but it's just a huge opportunity. And so how are we thinking about next steps, and how many more workshops do you think we need to kind of get where we need to go? Because I do think we have kind of the RV decisions we need to make, and maybe we're almost there. I think you're going to focus on this, but I know, Bill, you're not going to.
Yeah, I would just ask that there be an alternative view and flesh out my design. There are some good thoughts on that. And
I guess at what point can we focus on one design and you can advocate for your pieces of that design? But I would like Eric to focus his work. So
well, I would really say if you take a look at the 2006 land use plan, move off of those top 2 western lines of RVs. If they were not there, and you were to consolidate in ways that John was pointing out, then I could. Well, and in fact, take a look at my plan. Maybe I've suggested a transition that that we have 10 RVs on another line. That would be 60. I know we just heard from Cheryl that she doesn't think 30 amps work. Well, it's 30 amps has been what we've been using for a good long time. Obviously, the whole electrical would be upgraded, so I don't think we'd have the shocks and the various problems we have. But instead of putting in 63 pedestals, possibly we put in 50 and then have the other 10 sites for short-term rentals, or those that don't
feel
need.
like we still need to talk about this? Because if so, we'll make this an item at the next meeting. And I wonder what Eric, what do you need from us so that we can make?
So this discussion is central to the rest, and I know you're waiting for the other pieces, but it all sort of comes out of the decisions about the RV and the circulation. So my view would be continuing this discussion as soon as possible to try to arrive at, for us to take that back, to work on that. If there's an interest on peeling off those western bays and trying to consolidate that, seeing what that alternate looks like sooner rather than later. I know you have policy workshop and other things you want to work through. To me, those kind of fall into place after this piece of the conversation.
Doesn't make sense to have a policy discussion until we know where we're going. So
Should we take a picture of, or take one of your diagrams if we want to change it, send it to you before the next meeting and see what everybody has to say? I know Bill sent you his
see, this is
information.
what I don't want to do. And I think that was probably, I
How
should have
did
been
you see
made,
which
I should have been
picture?
clearer that when Ed suggested that we work with Eric, he didn't want each one of us sending individual ideas to Eric. That would come here, and these workshops are designed to bring your ideas and he can take it from here.
Well, we seem to be stuck. That's
know.
why I just know if
That's
we'll
why
be
I'm
stuck again and
trying to
April
understand how
27th.
much people are interested in pursuing another iteration beyond, say, where are we? What was the one? 2.3. Like that to me is a compromise. There is a lot of, it's not exactly what I want. It's not exactly what you want. There is more, we're getting at certain principles. We're opening up more space. We're providing greater views. You have the amphitheater pieces there. And we're not having the congestion along the bottom.
As I've said from the beginning, we can have I think putting forth a couple of alternative views to the town council is not a problem. We have a lot of townsfolk that we're starting to hear from that are thinking, well, wait, this is homogenized. What do you don't have to come up with one plan. I think that multiple plans is not a problem. So it's just a matter of whether you're willing to do that.
I guess we could do it, but I do think then we would end up having like majority opinion, minority opinion, like one member of the council felt strongly about putting this, that's fine.
If take those two lines off the top of the hill, give the hill back to people.
It's for the people.
It's not.
We use it for the people 3 months of the year.
It's 4 months, but it's a total block. You come in and most people feel very uncomfortable. And when I saw Beta's plan, I thought, well, we've really, you're beautifying it for the RVs. It's a beautiful RV park, but it's not accessible as I would like.
So
public.
I think having a couple of the different plans is kind of interesting because there's also this bond that has already been approved by the voters. And so if it happens that the bond right now would cover one of those plans, then all of that could happen really quickly. Like the electrical upgrade could happen quickly.
Right.
And then the plan is there. But, then if there's interest in, another plan, like it's there, they have options. So I don't know.
They have options.
Yeah.
What they're looking for is a recommendation so they can make decisions about the placement. I mean,
Mhm.
they may not take any of our recommendations,
Mhm.
but that was the idea, is that we would come forth with recommendations so that they could
Mhm.
make decisions about the electrical.
Mhm.
If we want to have multiple options, fine, but I do want to, I want to limit Eric's time.
Mhm.
He's getting certain pay for a certain amount of work.
Mhm.
And to me, it would be ideal if we could consolidate around a plan.
Mhm.
I think there's lots of compromises being made, but if you really want to hold on to something, then maybe we do that more toward the end. I'd like to focus on something.
But what if the 63 is just a little bit over the bond for the, the cost of the electrical upgrade for 63 is just beyond the bond, but the 50 would be within the
The
bond.
bond
You
is
just phase it.
67.
You
You'd be
wouldn't you
the-
face
Well,
it?
the
I mean, I think one way or the
74.
other. Okay. I was thinking about this morning. It strikes me that all of the work that let's say they say, yeah, guys, great job. We want to do it all.
Mhm.
It's going to happen over time.
Mhm.
I think we need some design certainty around the backbone of the electrical system.
Yeah, I agree.
And it might be more efficient to have all the pedestals done at once. But I could also foresee that you would say, let's get the backbone in place. Let's get 2 rows of pedestals done. And besides, I mean, we've always sort of said that in any downscaling of the number of RVs, it's going to happen over time. And so you might upgrade like 2 or 3 rows that you knew were going to be there for the long term and not upgrade the rest because 30 amps of work and you might have differential pricing depending on when you got 30 amps or 50 amps. I would actually rethink that because we pay for the 30 amps and they pay the 50 amps. But I guess I've been thinking we didn't need to limit ourselves to what has been funded, but rather we needed to make recommendations that there were some chunks they could bite off to utilize a bond that's already been approved.
We've been told the electrical is its own it's
I understand,
yeah.
but it is, I mean, I don't believe you need to execute that whole thing in one go.
Mhm.
I know that it's more economically efficient to do so.
Mhm.
What we can't do is design too small
Mhm.
and then say later, oh,
Just kidding, we want another transformer because it's a real pain in the butt. I do wonder if an alternative to 2.3 as is modified here would be to take the west, I mean, I'm not quite sure where the peak of the hill is, but if you could plot the topography here, and I do wonder if you just shifted that westernmost row to the east, like, I mean, I still have an issue about parking, but if you took that row,
That's basically what Bill is proposing,
no,
I think.
no, he's not. He's proposing taking those two rows,
No.
taking them away and cutting the number down to 50. And what I'm saying is,
Going to the east is, am I wrong in moving down there? It's so congested. There's already a lot going on down there.
I agree that we have that it is congested and I don't know what we do.
If we're going this way, then I want to do a plan A that doesn't change beyond 75. And how do we make it as existing, what's there, slightly beautified, and we do all the other things we're talking about, like parking and trails. So we do maybe a status quo, slightly improved, midpoint 62, which is 2.3 or whatever, and then Bill's 50. It just shows we couldn't come together at a time when no one in this country can come together. And I thought we could kind of work on compromise. And you're not.
Well, the council's going to decide anyway on the number of spots. We're not going to decide. The council, we could say
But
100.
we can propose what we
Yeah,
think as a
agreed.
community of
Agreed.
disparate interests came
Right.
up with as a consensus.
Yeah, me too.
Right, what I'm saying is, let's say we do 75, my favorite, because it's status quo. But it doesn't mean the council is going to accept 75. They're going to debate it and they're going to say, well, we still want to reduce it 10%. We'll go to 67. We can propose it. It doesn't mean they're going to take it. That's all I'm saying. I want 75, some people want 50. The town's not going to go by what we say. They're
But
going to
you're
go by
willing
what
to-
they want.
I'm assuming you're willing to discuss other things, to negotiate, to compromise as a committee of residents, to give the council something so they're not just forced to have this same argument, that we could do this for them. That's what our task is. And I think it's unfortunate if we can't do that.
Well, we're close with 2.4. Instead of the green space that you've put in there, drop a level of the westernmost RVs, fill that in. You get 50 down below on three levels plus some.
I'm not following and people have to leave. So I guess maybe I don't know if we can we'll have to check with you, Eric, on your timing and see if you could come to another workshop in April. We focus on some of the things that there aren't areas of disagreement on that we could move forward on, or if we just move it to May when Bill is here. Like what?
Well, I think there's clarity on 2.3 adjustments to just get to that, which is 63. I don't know that we have a viable 75 that you talked about, so we'd have to explore that. And then if the decision is to go sort of towards a 50, I think what Bill is describing. But eliminate this row,
Yeah.
make this happen here.
Yeah.
So you're going to lower terrace, you're going to have two
Yeah,
terraces?
so have a terrace there, have a lower terrace,
We can see. whether
fill
it's-
in around the sides.
That road goes through or does something like that, but it's sort of a version of 2.4. This road would cease to exist.
Right.
This road was just, so some of the nice things in this loop road provides opportunities for parking for those western views and for people to access this green space. By backing that side with just RVs, sort of a challenging space for the public to engage, so we're probably gonna just talk about that as a group, but we can try refinements to both of these sort of as modified and see where that takes you.
John?
I'm actually wondering if there's a different way of progressing in order to make headway across the board.
Yeah,
There are a lot of things we've kind of talked about and we said we'll get to it.
yeah.
And so I wonder if we could maybe bottom out 2.3, answer questions about, lower bathroom. I mean, if we went with 2.3, how many things could we decouple? How would we, and how do we kind of close out ideas around Tucson Battery, the Whiting Battery,
Yeah.
Right.
beach access? How do we
Lot 22.
finish this,
Yeah,
make more ground on the full scope of work? And then stop and think, have we got another plan for the RV campground that we really want to pursue? It might, I'm sure we're not done having a debate about the campground, but I also know that we're going to run out of time
Yeah.
on everything.
yeah, I would like to get to those other things too. And I do think they're decoupled enough unless I'm just speaking as a novice, Eric.
No, I mean, I think this is not easy, right? But the pieces around it you've been working on, I think are coming together, and I'm hearing, lot 22 consensus on that. A lot of the other pieces that we talked about, interest in the battery and rediscovering that. So all that stuff makes sense. And I think we're close on a lot of those things in terms of reading your recommendations. And then the central discussion is going to be, because RVs in circulation are interconnected in parking. So they all sort of occupy the core. So you can work around the edges some, but you're only going to be able to get so far with that.
Okay, I would just ask, Eric, are you able to kind of put the plan I put forth into something that's comparable, a design?
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about modifying
No, I'm talking about take my design.
your drawing.
And it's great to have 4 things up there that we can look at. I feel at a loss by not having.
The same style of rendering
Yeah,
and so on.
exactly.
But that also,
go back.
now Richard has one too. He wants his.
Okay,
done.
that's fine.
I don't think we should be doing that at this point. We know I don't know that it's gonna get us further. We know what you're proposing.
Yeah.
But he's gonna be informed by that in his next round. Let's get there that way.
It allows us to take a look at, the point I was just making of having an extra row in there that, might initially just use 30 amps. It's what
So
that
just
green,
based on the RV part of it,
Yeah.
not on all of your trailer parking, CISF road
Correct.
things that we've already said
Yeah.
we don't want.
yeah.
I think cost-wise, 50 amp is, they're just gonna put it in. It's easier just to go 50 amp on everything and then
Well,
Doing
segregate.
30 is because he's staging the reduction. So he's keeping 30 or some number above 50. And the upgrade to 50 is for 50.
Yeah, so we have 50, new pedestals and the others, we don't have
That's
to.
if they work.
What?
That's if the other 30, all the other 30 amps work. If you're gonna upgrade every,
Right.
you're not gonna I wouldn't do a half-assed improvement. It's like doing half your house and then forgetting to put the shingles on.
So the only comment I'd make is, if you knew you were migrating,
Yeah.
and every one of these plans has a migration,
Yes.
and if you wanted to hurry,
Yeah.
you'd put in the pedestals for all those sites you knew weren't gonna move. And you might have to wait. I mean, again, I'm not sure how we fund the whole thing, but I'm convinced that we need to make the pedestal investments where we know we're gonna have camping sites.
Agree. And it probably will be 50 amp.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But if you it's probably worth having a conversation with Ed because he'd be able to tell
It's
you.
right, he's right there and
Right.
chomping at the
Oh.
bit.
I guess you got another meeting.
About the transition plan and what a construction project would look like. If there's a transition where we're migrating slowly from old pedestals to new pedestals, keep in mind, we have no as-built plan. We have no idea what the conduit and network looks like. We don't have an electrical plan as to what's what at this point. It's a lot of kind of feeling our way around. If you want to do it incrementally, that's going to add to the schedule, going to add to the cost, and add to the work. Right? In a perfect world, there'd be a plan. Have the stores laid out, we're ready to go, run the conduit, get it done. If you want to do it in the most cost efficient, time efficient manner, that would be
I appreciate that.
taking the dollar into a number.
Yeah.
We again, we're gonna lose a season or two of building and building costs. Right, so that's probably not the way to do it.
I hear.
There are ways that we could, I think is what John is suggesting is, if we know the ultimate goal, to phase in the work to get there, to get it done. But I would urge you not to have this migration plan, this transition.
Okay.
You're better off of, here's our ultimate goal, let's build for that. Helps you with it.
It's very helpful. And the only reason that I was thinking, I mean, right now we're sort of centering on 63, 65 in all this discussion, which means that that's 2 to 3 years of having more campers than we're designing for, even if you said you were never going to replace an exit. And so I'm just figuring if there are campgrounds that you're not exiting this year, sorry, if there are camping spots that you're not exiting this year, that you would leave them on their existing service if you knew you were going to exit them in a couple of years. That's all. And if that's not practical, it's not practical.
Right.
Quick final comment on maybe middle ground. The idea of terracing this block to create RVs in this row, isn't that consistent or common between? Yes. So I mean, if we want to take one piece of this away, kind of central to everything is currently there are no RVs because of the way the topography is here. So this concept, that concept, all sort of say we should look at this space to the east and see if we can establish, because that involves earthwork, that involves a lot of sort of planning and organizational pieces, but then other things can work around that if that is a decision. And it seems consistent in our discussions today.
So we're gonna go with filling the 2 middle blocks.
I wasn't trying to take on the second half of that, just sort of looking at this. Maybe that makes sense to look at putting RVs into that.
I mean, that's definitely an area that we want to do, but I'm not ready to give up on the top. I think we've already given up a whole line of RVs.
Through that one. Right now, it's just a single row of RVs, right?
Yeah. A lot.
Yeah, under the 2-3, that stays.
Marissa, 50 is not a reasonable radical number.
2.3.
And giving up the hilltop is, as people, the plan 20 years ago called for the same thing.
And it didn't happen.
No, it didn't. They would be lucky if anything happens out of this one. But
That's unfortunate because I think we could actually put forward something that is moving toward where you want to be, moving away from where I want to be.
Well, I just,
to be continued, I think.
Yes, yeah. All right, so we'll figure out, I think our next meeting.
27th.
Yeah, I mean, but we have to see if Eric can come to that, if there's enough time
Think so.
between meetings. If it's worth having workshops, if we can have it around things we already agree on. But what I don't want is Bill's not here and he comes back and isn't happy with everything we've talked about, so.
I'm back on May 7th, that meeting, if we want to do that.
I don't know, we'll have to.
Sorry, John, if you can just use the mic.
I think the answer for what we can do on the 27th comes back to how many of these things that are not in the core space can we advance, right? I think that's what we should focus on. And maybe we can land a bunch of those things.
On the 27th.
Yeah,
Yeah, everything except for the RVs.
yeah,
Pretty
pretty much.
That's in circulation too.
Right,
that
but they're
doesn't need
tight.
circulation.
Yeah,
I know.
but we can do the campground, the tents, the paths.
All right, so thank you, Eric. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Move.
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
No. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Everyone, if you can either leave from the double doors there or here, they just locked the two other main town hall doors. So just one of the exit doors in this room. Thank you.
Hold on.